Yeah.
Oh, we're doing the fog.
Yeah, we need some fog.
Yeah.
We need some intro fog.
Oh, yeah. Keep it in.
Yes. Look at that. Perfect.
There you go.
Yes. All
How's
right.
that?
That's perfect. Here we are, a stab in the dark, and it's Halloween.
Ooh.
Best of the year, right? Best holiday of the year. What do you reckon, Dave? Best holiday of the year?
Well, I wish it was a day off, but if it was a day off, it'd be the best day of the year.
It's best public holiday. That's what it should be. Look, we've got Halloween snacks,
treats.
What do we have?
Well, one Halloween snack, one not so Halloween.
We got some Tonys, some chocolat.
The fuck is Tony's?
Tony's is great.
Yeah,
and
international audience mystified by those, probably.
Haribo.
Everybody knows those classics. The eggs are the best.
Trick or treat.
It looks like you've rolled the dice and got trick. So
Oh no.
we're in. It's unorthodox opening method, but we're in.
There we go. There's some Haribo.
Some for the road there.
Some for the road on the floor. We got some Tonys. Because this is...
Mix the chocolate and the Haribo.
They're on opposite sides.
Monster.
Stop trying to, segregate.
Derail. You're
literally segregating.
You just defended segregation is what you did. It's okay, they're on different sides.
And look what else we got. Right? Oh,
the
big old
the most Halloween
What has that got to do with Halloween?
Orange and Scottish. And it's horrific up there.
As we all
Halloween,
know, the Scottish invented Halloween and popularised it. Yeah.
Wow. It's not far away in Ireland, is it? No, there you go. See, he's dumbstruck.
What are you saying? Ireland invented Halloween?
Yeah.
Ireland?
Yeah.
Huh.
I thought it was. Fact check me, but...
Okay.
We're getting a live fact check here.
Cheers to Halloween. Cheers. Dave.
Merry Halloween.
Halloween cheers. Merry Christmas. Christmas for horror movie folk, anyway.
Indeed.
And...
The perfect time for the perfect movie for this time of year.
Exactly.
Gaelic.
Yeah, you see, is it Gaelic?
That's what it says.
What year?
Irish, yeah.
See?
Also the Irish language name of November.
There you go.
Halloween?
Samhain.
Oh, right, the Gaelic.
Yeah, not Halloween.
I'll get excited for a second. Let me just temper my excitement.
Hey guys, speaking of Halloween and being in Halloween right today, the 31st of October, which it definitely is as we film this.
Totally.
Yes.
As you
It's
can
almost
see.
going out live. It takes like 10 minutes to edit
exactly.
these, right? So,
You know, we're not even dressed up, and that's because we were so excited to be here. Not because
my
it's
Halloween costume
September.
is right over there, just for the party
for
afterwards.
later. Yeah, the after
exactly.
show. Yeah, absolutely. But as it's Halloween, and we are talking about Halloween right now, this is going to be about the film Halloween.
It is.
Wow.
It is. Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yeah, as you can see here, but at
Yeah.
the same time, we're not going to be talking about all of them. We're
only
talking about the first one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The original 1978.
You don't think some of the others are going to creep in at some point?
They'll
Probably
definitely
will.
I'm
creep
sure
in.
they will,
I
yeah.
won't miss the mark to shit on some of them.
Like Michael Myers creeping in through a doorway and no one noticing. We'll probably get in there.
What a segue. Wow.
And on
Masterful.
that one, let's begin. Let's talk about it a bit. Now, Mike,
Correct.
what do you
That is
think
me.
of Halloween? I think this is the one that, this is the first one we've covered, which I've actually watched before.
Oh, right, okay. Well, this is probably the one of the ones we've covered so far that I think is the best and the one that I've seen the most. I've probably seen this movie more than a dozen times, perhaps more. I think it's an absolute classic of the genre. I love all of the movies it inspired, basically, the entire period afterwards, 5 years, where slashers were coming out, good, bad, don't really care, all enjoyable. Donald Pleasance in this movie has some amazing lines.
The best lines.
Absolutely love the writing and the energy he
Shakespearean
brings. Yeah.
Whoa.
The soundtrack is one of the best of the Carpenter suite and just in general horror movie soundtracks.
So, with all that being said, why do you hate it, Dave?
Me?
Mr.
Okay,
Overrated
first, I
over
do not
there.
hate it. I do not hate it. But I do think it's a bit overrated.
Sounds like hate speech
how?
to me.
Whoa. Well, I mean, to be honest, there are a lot of things about it that I like, and I'm sure we'll go into more detail. but the like some of the concepts that it introduces, I think are probably stronger in this film than any of the other slasher films that I've seen. I think really like my main issue is really just how it overshadows Black Christmas, which for me I find vastly superior in every single metric.
You're just salty that Black Christmas doesn't get enough.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. Like I don't, I mean, I have some small problems with Halloween. I do like it overall.
I think a lot of people love Black Christmas. It's not like some unknown movie. I think they can both share the limelight.
Yeah, I just wish.
If anything, it's Friday the 13th that's overshadowing a lot of movies it probably shouldn't be overshadowing.
Yes, but like, I mean, Black Christmas is not mentioned. I mean, Black Christmas isn't known to the same level as Friday the 13th, Halloween.
I think you probably have to be a bit more of a horror fan rather than just bump into a horror every so often.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's, again, probably because of the nature of Black Christmas not having an identifiable killer and also not having, like, 12 sequels and remakes and so on.
Firstly, the best parts of Halloween, Black Christmas did first, in my opinion. And
I don't remember any 10 out of 10 Donald Pleasance monologues in Black Christmas. So
are they 10 out of 10?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
11 out
we'll
of 10.
We'll talk about it. And how about you, Joe?
I love it. We said before in our first podcast, this is my favourite horror movie of all time. So I'm coming into this one.
Into it hot. With love. Yeah.
With lots of love. And it's just the one that I always go back to. I love this film so much. And I wasn't really sure why. And this is really the first time that I've analysed why I love it. So I'm excited to talk about that within the context of this film.
How many times do you reckon you've seen it?
Oh, God. That's difficult. Like 20, 30? I don't know.
Do you think you've seen this more times than any other horror movie you've seen?
This might be my most watched movie of all time.
Movie in general.
All genres?
Maybe all genres.
Wow.
The only other one that might get anywhere near it is Mrs. Doubtfire. And I was talking...
Which
is also a horror movie in some ways.
Yeah.
Paul Pierce Brosnan has a bad time in that movie, so a bit horror-y. Yeah.
No one should be horrible to Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, he's a good guy in that movie.
So yeah, I would struggle because they're my two... These are actually probably my two favourite films. So Mrs. Doubtfire and the original Halloween.
The duality of man.
And they both wear masks, the main characters.
To be honest, they're not so different. Like, it wouldn't take much to make Mrs. Doubtfire just like Halloween.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'd be suspicious of a man who's a big fan of masks. But yeah.
Except for Glenn Jacobs, who played Kane in wrestling. He's a good guy.
Is he your favourite wrestler of all time? Because he wears a mask?
No, he's not. Rey Mysterio's a nice guy.
Is he your favourite wrestler of all time because he wears a mask?
No. But perhaps Shawn Michaels, who wore a mask on the outside too.
Whoa, where are we going?
But anyway,
the Cybermen wear a mask.
The Cybermen do wear
your
a mask.
favourite Doctor Who thing.
They are, yeah.
So
there you go. But yeah, so it's just my favourite horror film of all time, and I really looked into it more, and I've looked into the history of it more, and bought a big book about all the Halloween films.
Got a bit more context.
Exactly. So I'm really excited to get into it. But I reckon we start with the plot. So let's go over to the plot, which I have here.
Let's do it.
When we'll just sort of go through some of our thoughts of when we watched it last, which should have been recently. But
well, we were supposed to watch it for this.
You would hope. Yeah. Well, everybody watches it for Halloween, right? And this is Halloween.
That's true.
We were going to watch it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just on an everyday
playlist. We're going to watch it again
because
it's the 31st. Yeah. Watch Halloween on the 31st. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
You're really convincing people.
Well, you're undermining me.
It's the night he came home. Make it sound like
that's not when it doesn't start on the night.
It's making it sound like a bit of a fairy tale.
Halloween opens on the titular holiday in 1963 within the quiet town of Haddonfield, Illinois. Dressed as a clown and armed with a kitchen knife, 6-year-old Michael Myers murders his older sister Judith in her upstairs bedroom. The film then jumps ahead 15 years to find the boy's longtime psychiatrist, Dr. Samuel Loomis, driving to Smiths Grove Sanitarium on a stormy night to transfer his patient to a court hearing.
Okay, can I just say, and I forgot to mention this in the introduction, but it's one of the best openings in all the horror films. Well, it's probably my second favorite. Whoa.
Harry Moe everywhere.
We're leaving that bad boy in. My 10 out of 10 skills. Sorry, Dave.
Sorry, no, carry on.
It's probably like this.
They haven't got nuts in, right?
It's going to be a murder on camera.
Took it without thinking. Fuck's sake, man.
Jesus Christ.
It doesn't seem nutty, so I think I'm okay.
No,
Doesn't taste like pain.
Yeah, I'm not suffering.
Okay, the opening of the film is absolutely iconic.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
one of the best
one of the
openings.
best
yeah, because we said that about Night of the Living Dead, but this is even stronger. Those
Yeah.
two scenes
Yeah.
are two of the best horror scenes of all time, and they open the movie.
Yeah, I mean, like from a technical perspective, like, they use the Steadicam, right, to simulate his POV,
Yep.
which I think was a relatively new.
it was really new. at that
Definitely.
time.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
at that time,
Definitely
yeah.
popularized by this film.
Yeah, and the whole like it wasn't like the first film to do the killer's POV, but probably the best like
Yeah,
implementation.
they did it
of
a
that
lot in
idea.
your Giallo movies.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
preceded this.
Yeah.
But in terms of like
Massive,
massive releases that
Well,
everybody saw,
Black Christmas does it.
and that had, yeah.
I mean, Peeping Tom
It's
does
gonna-
it like famously.
This is true. This is true.
yeah.
Yeah. But none of those are as famous as
No,
Halloween.
no, of course not.
And none of those popularized that. To
Yeah,
the
I think,
point
like-
where
yeah, like-
Friday the 13th and etc. exploded because of the POV.
Yeah,
killer.
and so like the 1-2 punch of the long tracking shot, and then the cut to the reveal of Michael Myers is basically like just some boy,
Yeah.
basically not an evil looking boy, not a particularly descript looking boy.
Yeah, and the stunned parents looking at
Yeah,
him and the
yeah,
slow
and then
zoom out.
yeah, like the crane shot after that, like those two
Yeah.
together, like amazing.
And also, it's not one take, but it's illusion of one take.
Yeah, I think it's like
And he
three.
didn't
They
see-
cut
takes,
three
yeah.
they cut together. Yeah.
And
when
when
he puts
he-
the
when-
mask on, and
That's it.
Yeah, but like, that's not a thing that you saw a lot in horror movies beforehand as well. You did see it just like, POV shots and steady cams and so on, but not so much.
Or like longer takes, you mean?
Yeah,
It's more of like a Hitchcock thing, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
It's more of a like thriller thing, or your kind of arty movies would do that a lot, big long takes. Yeah,
And it's Deborah Hill.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
you see is
yeah.
Deborah Hill.
yeah,
No, it's
which is
because-
why she's got very manicured nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's because they were limited with the hours working with the child, right? That she had to fill in on that scene.
Oh, is that what it was? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
why?
So they were only allowed a few hours with the kid, and so they were just like, we'll just get her to do it. It's fine.
Yeah, well, it was a bit cobbled together in general because there's quite a lot of people that wear the Michael Myers mask and be Michael Myers throughout
Yeah,
the movie as
yeah.
well, isn't there?
Yeah.
A lot of like pragmatic movie making. Yeah.
was quite funny in the documentary I watched. And that there's a bit where they're talking about that scene going up the stairs, and he said the cameraman was holding it, and you can see it wobble as they go up the stairs because of how heavy it was. And there's some, it's like, please don't die, he'd like fall down and die, because it must have been a real struggle to like those cameras back then would have been like humongous.
And it's like mounted to your
19-something,
body.
yeah.
Yeah.
And since you also mentioned like the subsequent scene, so like the 15-year time jump, I do think, and in my opinion, this is the best use of Loomis, is the way that he is basically an extension of Michael's character. Like his reaction in that one scene with Nurse,
Yeah.
what's her name?
Because
Um,
Myers doesn't have any
Not
dialogue,
Ratchet.
obviously.
yeah, not Ratchet, yeah.
No dialogue, no background, no character work outside of what Loomis gives him.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and
that's the
his
perfect
his like
companion.
manic
Yeah.
reaction to him, and like he's like recommending drugging him with Thorazine to do his like court appearance.
Yeah.
Like
You won't be able to sit up. That's the point.
yeah, it says so much. It's just
It's Marion Chambers.
Marion Chambers. So.
Yeah, and it worked. Yeah, it works right from the start. Like the build-up of his like evil presence, his like inhumanness, before you ever see him in any kind of like murderous context or anything like that. You already get this impression that he's like.
I mean, you have already
Something
seen him kill
special.
his sister.
That's true, but as a child, I guess.
Oh, that doesn't count. That's totally
doesn't
fine.
really count.
I kind of love that opening scene with Loomis as well, because it introduces you to this kind of guy who's kind of on the fringes of being a bit mental himself, to be honest.
he's very
Yeah,
erratic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was apparently drunk when they filmed that scene.
Oh, was he?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, he didn't even like filming that whole night sequence, did he? Because he
Yeah.
could have been like somewhere eating and drinking, and he was out in the cold, dark, and it was raining. Like,
Yeah,
so-
well, for a while at the start, he wasn't so sure about the movie in general, was he? A bit like Alec Guinness in Star Wars
Yeah.
kind of effect. Yeah.
but it gave him a whole career. Like, to be fair, he's
Yeah,
in all of them
completely.
up to his death.
Yeah, I mean, he was in a lot of stuff before that, but it definitely rejuvenated his career and made him more of a household name because he was in like Great Escape and stuff, and
Yeah.
been in the
when
business for quite a while.
was he in James Bond then? Was that after this?
No,
That would have been
years before.
That
It
would have
was
been, like 60s as well.
that was You Only Live Twice. So as he plays Blofeld in You
but
Only
I'm
Live
not
Twice
sure
with Connery.
how much he's actually in the 70s up till this point.
Well, it's because the
Citation needed. But
yeah. I mean, I think Americans would only know him as Blofeld. I think this probably introduced him to a whole new American audience, like people who might not even watch James Bond or wouldn't be transferred across to horror films. You know, that he actually has become more of a household name, I would say, in some areas just because of that. Will in England will know him
Yeah.
because of that and Great Escape and things, but
yeah. I mean, I'd still
over
argue
there.
he's the guy from Halloween for a lot of people.
Yeah,
including
definitely.
me. Like the first movie I'll think of if anyone wants
Yeah,
to say
me
Donald
too,
Pleasance is Halloween.
I do also think of Loomis when I think of Donald Pleasance,
'Cause
even though I
also
think he's
it's his-
great.
I also think it's his best performance as well. I think it's amazing in this
But
movie.
interestingly, he's iconic in both Halloween and in James Bond. When you think
Yeah.
of Blofeld, because Blofeld is in like almost every single Sean Connery Bond, right? And he's played by a different person each time. But when you actually think of
The
Connery's-
the Pleasance.
Yeah,
one.
I'm
you
not
think
sure
of
that you see the
Pleasance.
face of Blofeld for a lot of those actors, though.
no, but there is one in On Her Majesty's Secret Service as well with Lazenby. He's in that one,
Yeah.
and it's completely different from the one
Well,
before.
nobody ever thinks of the one in the Daniel Craig's. That's for sure.
No, not Inspector.
Oh god, I forgot about that. Yeah. But you heard that like Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee
Yeah.
were approached. Can you imagine how
turned it down,
How that would have
yeah.
worked?
Well, yeah. I mean, it would have been interesting.
Yeah,
but
It would have been very interesting to see Peter Cushing in that kind of role. And Christopher Lee as well as a good guy would be very interesting as well.
Yeah.
Because it would have been right in Cushing's wheelhouse, but Christopher Lee would have been like
Playing a bit
flipping
against
sides
type,
a bit
yeah.
times. So there would have been interesting both ways.
But I think one of the arguments against it was that it would turn it into a Hammer production or feel like give it that essence of something
Maybe
old.
a little bit, yeah. But also by that point, Hammer was a bit more schlocky than it ever was. It was definitely trying to ape the American horrors by that point. So
But it is interesting that that it was Donald Pleasance. They wanted an English actor, didn't they? They wanted the English voice in there to give it some gravitas, some depth.
yeah,
And that's like the idea of having that. It's funny that's how the English voice is perceived over in America, that it holds some sort of
yeah.
extra.
Well, it was often villains, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That would be English accented in a lot of movies.
And it is right when Donald Pleasance states a line, he really hammers it home.
Yeah.
And it is that part of the accent which does it. Like, the evil is gone, the evil is gone. You're like,
If anything, you could argue that if it was an American accent, people would proclaim it a little bit as overacting, perhaps. But because of like the arch nature of his voice, it seems more a bit natural.
I mean, it is a bit
him
hammy
to-
when he does say
Yeah.
things like that, but it is great. And you know, even in the car when she lights the cigarette in the car, and then she goes to light up another one. That whole bit, he's kind of looking at her irritated. I love that. He's kind of like, "You're lighting another cigarette? Like, what are you doing?" I love that whole sequence in the
Yeah.
car, and it also
Well, he's just on
introduces-
edge. He's irritated.
He
He's
is.
like, yeah.
And that
He wants to
character
get
of
the job
Marion
done.
Chambers as well. She gets recurring roles in later films.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she gets H2O. She's in the opening of that. And I think it's a part of the strength of a Carpenter film there, right? Is that she is hardly in that film. Yeah, she's quite iconic to me.
Yeah, I think so. I think even from just that one scene, you get a pretty strong kind of sense for the kind of character that she is.
Yeah.
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 And it's
Built
impressive.
upon later on, yeah.
And I think this film does that really well with its characters. It's not like a lot of other slashers for me. I seem to actually care about the characters within this one.
Yeah,
To
I
a
love
certain
the
extent.
girl. I mean, we're skipping ahead slightly, but I love the girl that says totally.
Totally.
Like, literally.
Totally.
Linda.
Yeah.
Linda, yeah.
Can't say two sentences without saying totally, and I love it.
Yeah, from Carrie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we learn that Michael was immediately institutionalized in a catatonic state, unable to offer any explanation for his crime. Upon arrival, Loomis is alarmed to find the hospital's patients freely wandering the grounds. Amid the chaos, Michael steals the transport vehicle and escapes into the night. Just as Loomis suspects, Michael heads home to Haddonfield, murdering a mechanic for his jumpsuit along the way.
So you know that sequence where Donald Pleasance is out the car, and it's just Nurse Chambers inside, and then Michael like jumps, you know,
Yep.
from the rear of the car onto the roof, and he's like bathed in the brake light. It's like a demon. I was watching it this time. I was like, wow, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's kind of malevolent, right?
Yeah.
Using the brake lights like that.
Yeah.
And he smashes the window, and you can see basically
like
if you know that
wrench,
there's a flesh coloured wrench on his hand.
Yeah.
But I think it's a continuation of the intro, which I've already lauded. But it's tense, and the music kicks in. The music is the first taste outside of the intro. Well, I mean, it's played throughout, but yeah, the music as they're approaching, and you see the people in their gowns from the hospital and stuff, and it kicks in, and then it kicks into high gear, and you get that like wow or whatever that sound it plays as he jumps up on the roof.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. When he's in the
Put that on the soundboard.
Wow.
Yeah, I made it sound a bit more cat-like than it possibly is in the movie.
along with the Cybermen. Hey, what are you?
and the Grudge. That was also cat-like. Maybe cats are my jam. My bread and butter.
Yeah. What I like about this scene as well, I've always enjoyed this, is that they really don't give an explanation to why Michael drives a car. But I love that they do that, and they just leave it as a mystery.
Do you know in the novelization apparently gives an explanation?
Yes.
Yeah. You heard about this. Yeah. So apparently
they have a lot of random stuff in that book that attempts to like give context to things, don't they? I don't know whether it's described as canon these days.
Oh, who knows? I think it's much more fun if you don't know, because it's not really explained.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the novel, he drives a truck around the institute. That's how they say it.
Oh, I heard that he just was just watching. He was watching Dr. Loomis drive and just learned from watching Dr. Loomis drive.
Yeah.
It's like, so why can't kids drive?
Oh, and apparently the Curtis Richards who came up with it. Great. That's his name, isn't it? Curtis Richards. Yeah.
Richard Curtis.
Yeah, no, but his pen name is Curtis Richards.
Yeah.
So apparently he came up with the idea of Michael being allowed to drive a truck on the grounds of the institution.
Oh, right.
That's what that is.
Does that make more sense than him just knowing
makes less
supernaturally
sense.
how to drive?
Yeah.
Why would they do that? How is that good for the patients?
I don't know.
If presumably they're never going to let them out, it's kind of cruel to let them.
Well, I think
something to do with it, I guess.
I think the whole point is that what Richards is saying is that Michael had this presence about him that they would do what he wanted because everyone was scared of him, patients and staff.
They're trying to appease him.
Yeah, and he was less mute as well in the novelization because he
actually talks.
Oh, really? So he doesn't. Oh, right.
He talks in the beginning, so it starts on the same night, but in the novel he goes around to his grandmother's house and he's talking to his grandmother before, and they're all worried about him. In a way, so they're all worried about.
Have you read the novel?
No, I've just this book, Taking Shape, Developing Halloween from the Script to Scream. If you're listening, is a really really good. And it goes in depth into every single Halloween film, and they sort of talk about this in there, and they say about the book is actually quite interesting. It's got good reviews.
Yeah, and I might look it up on eBay. I wonder if it's affordable.
It's like I saw it at least for $100.
Yeah. I think possibly not.
Worth it.
Yeah.
never been re-released, and apparently Richards looks at it sometimes on Amazon, and he looks at the reviews, and they're all kind of high 5 stars, 4 stars, and he's been in touch with whoever owns the rights to Halloween now, and they just won't re-release it for whatever reason. It actually frustrates him that he can't. But he had huge.
He doesn't own the rights to his own book.
No,
he has to beg them for it.
Yeah. But he had a huge kind of. He was just able to do what he wanted. He had creative control on the novel because he basically says all the things that happen in Halloween. It's fine for a film, like Michael getting up after being shot like 6 times. It's fine for a film, but in a novel, it's like you've got to fill all of those gaps.
Yeah, it happens a lot. Like 2001 was released as a book around the same time, and that's massively different to the movie. Because obviously a book is so many pages, and you can't have as much ambiguity, I don't think, because if like that, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but if you're presenting a film as like a visual spectacle, you can't do that in a book form, can you? So.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why in the novel they introduce this stuff with the occult and Halloween and
Samhain.
Samhain, yeah. They mention all of this stuff in there much earlier than it's introduced into the films.
Right. So the Cult of Thorn, that
sort of stuff is somewhat
inspired by the book. Yeah,
and even some of the dialogue in the novel is in Halloween 2. So there's good evidence to know that Carpenter and Deborah Hill
read it
and approved it.
and
Yeah.
respected it.
But Carpenter has never been in touch with him, so he doesn't know. Carpenter's never spoken to him.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So he'll talk to anybody these days.
But yeah, so it starts with the novel has scenes with Michael at his grandmother's house being told about the boogeyman. And they're all worried about Michael because he's getting into trouble at school. It's kind of what the Rob Zombie thing
I was just about to say about that. Like, because,
except for it wasn't in the, like, white trash. So
well, that's
yeah.
Man, that bit is so quotable. But I mean, I think maybe it does work better in a book form. But definitely in film form, it completely like undercuts the mystery of Michael Myers.
The movie is definitely better in its pure minimalist form.
Yeah,
it's kind of like mystery element,
and I think that's the weakest element of the Rob Zombie remake is how much time is devoted to his childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the kid was a little bit miscast anyway.
There's a lot of weak elements.
Yeah.
in the Rob Zombie.
Next Halloween, we'll do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We got that to look forward to.
That's where like my favourite dialogue in the whole movie is, where Loomis is coming out of the institute and he's like, well, he can't have gone there because it's 150 miles away. And Loomis like, he was doing pretty well last night. I love that. It's just someone's giving him lessons.
The way he says it as well.
Yeah. It's just fantastic.
Yeah.
He's just turned up to 11 the entire time when he's just like,
on the ragged edge of
ranting,
sanity.
frustrated, losing his mind, basically,
The following morning finds 17-year-old Laurie Strode dropping off a key at the old Myers house for a realtor father, wholly unaware that the returned killer is watching her from inside. From this moment on, Michael fixates on Laurie, whom then he stalks throughout the day along with her friends Linda and Annie. Concerned over his patient's escape, Dr. Loomis travels to Haddonfield to warn Sheriff Brackett of the approaching danger. Meanwhile, Michael robs a local hardware store, stealing a white mask, rope and 2 kitchen knives. As night falls, Brackett and Loomis find unsettling evidence that Michael has indeed returned home. They stake out the old Myers place, hoping to catch the escaped killer. Loomis struggles to convince the sheriff that his patient is not mentally ill, but pure evil and quite dangerous.
Yeah, this is where we start getting the brilliant scenes of him watching in the distance and only Laurie sees. And every time she looks, he's gone, and the kicking in the music. I love the bit where it's following from the car in the car POV.
When he's following the kids, what's his name? Tommy Doyle.
And
the camera's on the back seat. Yeah. But there are so many good shots in this like kind of opening acts of the film. Like before it becomes nighttime. Yeah, almost every single shot. Like there's like the way the camera like just follows Laurie down the street. Something it's just hypnotic. Yeah. And there are lots of like, shots as well with the car in the background. You can like see Michael's car in the back. It's very cool.
And it's punctuated quite nicely by the scares as well. I read a trivia thing where it said basically they wanted to approach it like a radio play. And a radio play has to keep people interested, otherwise they'll change the station.
I heard,
so they want to have a scare every 10 minutes.
I heard Ghost Train, like similar idea, right? Every now and then have something jumping out. Yeah. So why do you think, ignoring all the sequels right now, why do you think he decides to focus on Laurie, if indeed he does?
Wrong place, wrong time.
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
that's all it is.
100%.
To an extent, though, I think it might be somewhat related to, in this movie, just talking about the first one, he's the only one, she's the only one that notices him throughout the entire thing until he starts killing people. So it's as if there is somewhat of a connection, maybe just because she's more aware of her environment or whatever, and he feels seen by her, perhaps.
Well, you think that the way that he's been looking at her when she catches him looking at her, he's been looking at other people and they've just been not noticing? Do you think?
Well, we only get Laurie's perspective, don't we?
I've heard a theory which is quite compelling, and maybe if you like rewatch it, you can look at it through this lens, which is that basically
Michael Myers is a Jew.
Is this one of those
whoa,
Shining kind of crazy?
It's not the same.
Has it got something to do with the Native Americans or the Nazis or
the Nazis? The Nazis.
Yeah.
But actually, that Laurie was completely incidental, and it's actually Annie that he was interested in. Because in almost every single scene where he's actually stalking someone, this is not my original theory, by the way. I think this is
Annie in the classroom when he's looking at her when she's in the.
Oh, she's in the classroum, I think. She just doesn't notice him. But
when he's looking at her out of her window, Annie's definitely not there.
Yeah, but I mean, he's just looking. He's at his house, and Laurie's at his house. But like, that doesn't necessarily mean he's stalking Laurie. But like, Annie is the one that he chooses to construct the shrine to his sister. out of. And Annie's the first person that he kills.
Yeah.
And I've also had it, kind of said that, yes, in movies, the final girl is the main target of the killer, but in practice, that's not going to be what a killer would do, right? They would kill the person they want to kill first, because why would you not?
Yeah.
Unless you want to torment them, because he has a sick sense of humor, right?
Yeah,
Michael
he
Myers
does.
has this.
Yeah.
He is quite funny at times when he puts the ghost costume on and puts the glasses
he's
on.
so goofy.
Yeah, it's kind of strange that he does that as an inhuman monster that he is, but yeah.
Because
it works.
It's questionable in like the characterization of him, because it makes him much more human.
But it's like playing with your prey, isn't it? He plays with his prey in a human way, like in an inhuman human way, like a cat might play around with the bird they've caught.
Yeah, it's like passive intimidation is his specialty, basically, because he doesn't do anything more than what he normally does in that situation. He's just put a thing on to masquerade himself as the boyfriend. But,
yeah, I think that kind of weakens him, though. For me, like the way that like a killer would torment their prey is kind of like a kind of human evil, right? He feels much more human to me, that he can kind of like at least have the empathy with another human being to understand how to torment them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if he was just killing people, just to kill people.
Yeah, I think this movie is a masterpiece, but I would agree that that's one of the weaker elements, and if I was to attack this movie, that's one of the only things I could attack it with.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's still evil, and, like, he's supposed to embody evil, right? But, like, I think it just dumbs him down to more of a human evil. Like, a much more kind of understandable
It's a bit more
evil.
Scream, isn't it? It's a bit more kind of tongue-in-cheek, almost comedic scene.
Yeah, and it's a great scene. Like, it's a great sequence. But, like, in terms of, for me, like, the way it characterizes him, like, it just weakens him for me a little bit. That he does those kind of things.
You could look at it as if, though, that he becomes less and less human as the night takes shape. Like, he starts off escaping, he's just stalking people, and he gets this sick pleasure out of it. And the mask, like Deborah Hill was saying, that the mask is like his shield. It puts him and fixes him in this one moment in time, and the killing like makes him more of just that one moment. He's like fully invested.
Yeah,
in
it's to distance himself from himself. I imagine.
It's like a shield for his humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's about like masking the human part of him, right? So again, this for me like weakens him, like that he would presumably. Well, why, do you think he keeps the mask on underneath the bedsheet? Probably.
He does, because you
yeah.
see him take off the bedsheet after he strangles her, and he's still got the mask on. Yeah.
I just.
And when he's asleep for a year in Halloween 5.
Whoa, we're not talking
the
about
mask
this.
is on.
Not yet.
Yeah. I don't want to acknowledge anything those movies added to the lore.
The scene where Laurie sees him in the classroom the first time. Firstly, this is like one of my favorite tropes in horror films, when like there's a classroom scene and they like talk about the theme of the movie, right? It recurs all the time. I love it. And
the main character's distracted by something.
Yeah, well, yeah,
spooky.
even more fitting. Yeah. But I guess we'll come back to like the themes of like fate and stuff later. But like that first time when she sees him, I find it to be very scary. Like I think it's the first time you see him with the mask. Most audiences, because I know you can see him in the house, but I missed him in the house like several times. But when you see him like behind the car and he's just far enough away that for me I felt like I couldn't quite tell that he was wearing a mask, and his face looked very uncanny, like, because of course it's white and it's vaguely human, but not
it's
quite
very
human.
early, and it's also the first time where he kind of supernaturally disappears.
Yeah,
he disappears in the amount of time that you wouldn't expect anyone to be able
away,
to have got away from it, because the car disappears as well. He's behind the car that he's driving, and then the car disappears in the time it takes for Laurie to
does it
answer with no tire squeal and
peels away,
no burnout.
Someone should add that to the soundtrack.
The remix version.
What's funny about this, if you do take in the second one into account here, Laurie's dad is one sick motherfucker.
Why?
Because he gives Laurie the keys to drop off at the old Myers house, fully knowing her past as being Michael Myers' sister.
Yeah,
but he doesn't know that Michael Myers is going to be there. Like,
No, but
it's just-
still, it's like you wouldn't bring someone up to go, oh, can you drop round the, So he's quite a sick person if you use the
No,
canon
Yeah, but
of
if
the
he, if he
original.
thinks it's a safe thing to do,
No, he's not going to
probably,
think twice
like,
about it. Like,
Yeah, he's all right with it. But also, I'm not so like. I don't think they thought about that at all
No,
when
of
they
course
made
not.
this
No,
movie.
of course they didn't.
Yeah.
And I don't want to.
I'm only joking.
Yeah, no. There's people on the internet that argue that and would
Yeah.
argue that. I mean, yeah. Did John Carpenter write the second one?
Yeah,
Yes.
but wasn't it a bit
Yeah.
like rushed? There was something
He
about
didn't-
it where he
What did he say? I think it was a 6-pack of beer a night.
yeah, that's
How
it.
to
Yeah,
get
he
through
just
it.
he just like
Yeah, but at the same
Just
time,
cracked
I
it
read
for-
that he'd written the score for this movie in like 4 days. So the man's capable of doing things fast well. So
But he didn't think there was a story to tell.
yeah, and you can tell. Well, didn't he like want it to be an anthology from the beginning?
yeah, I think that was his vision.
That was his idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they wrote it, him and Deborah Hill wrote it, and they both went, oh, Laurie's not really in this. And they didn't even realise what they were doing. Like, they just kind of, it happened, and then they realised, oops, Jamie Lee's coming back for this, and we've done almost nothing with her. That film frustrates the hell
I
out
think
of me.
I still like the Halloween too.
the
though. I
sister
think
connection
it's
like
one of the
ruins
best.
the strengths of the first film for me, and I much prefer to think of her as like a complete
Yeah.
like innocent victim. Like
Well,
complete
yeah. As
random
far
chance.
as I'm concerned, the first movie is it. That is the best bit, and I don't want anything else from the other ones bleeding into it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if I'm taking those twists or additions to the lore and applying them only on like the movies other than the first one, I think a lot of those movies are quite good. The second one's quite good, at least.
I mean, what I like about the Halloween franchise in general is that all these hypotheticals we're throwing out there and what could be have actually kind of been done. Like the new Halloween films
Yeah, because there's been so many
Every question
remakes
answered.
and-
have done it as a direct sequel to the original,
yeah.
which is, that was quite cool in itself. That first one, at least, you could say was a
twen-
very solid film.
2018. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like 2018.
Yeah, the rest not so much.
I like
in my
Halloween
opinion.
Kills.
I like Halloween. I like them all, including Halloween Ends, because it's just fucking hilarious.
That's not for the right reasons, then, is it, mate?
To be honest, that Halloween Ends brings back goofy Michael Myers.
I want to see,
like this is the Michael Myers that can drive cars. Is the Michael Myers that's sitting on the back of a moped.
I want to see Michael Myers sitting on the back of a
Yeah, but
moped.
the problem is, I love goofy, out there Freddy, and to a certain extent the same with Jason. But I don't want that from Michael Myers. I think Michael Myers is such a great like personification of evil and fear. I don't want him taking the piss out of. So yeah,
So in this scene where he's like stalking Laurie and her friends, like he's like he's still in the car and he's driving past, and then Annie shouts "Speed kills," and he just stops dead in the street. I find that really scary. Could you imagine that? Like just that happening.
And
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
in the score in that moment it goes up a notch. Do you ever notice
Yeah.
that? It goes dun-dun-dun-dun, and they go dun-dun-dun-dun. It's like goes to something and it's like whoa, you can like it's gripping you. The tension is gripping you in that scene.
yeah. The soundtrack elevates this movie like crazy.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly like executives.
one of the producers.
No, the
listened to
producers
it.
didn't find
Yeah.
it very scary until the score
And
was
then
added.
revised their opinion immediately. Yeah. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe there is a version where you can see it without the score and it would definitely hurt it, but I don't know whether it would be a bad thing.
I would like to
without
watch it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to watch it.
But like with every single Carpenter movie, the score is like one of the big things that sells
Yeah,
the movie,
yeah,
one of the big
absolutely.
things
That's
that
just
makes it a
his
great
filmmaking process is to have that in there, right? It's
Yeah.
just it wouldn't not be him without that. So it's almost
Well, that's why the
watching it without it.
That's why The Thing is so interesting. Though, right? One of his, if not most regarded movies, and he didn't do the score for that.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you get Ennio Morricone to do the score, then you don't say no to that, right? But
Yeah.
but
correct.
still, it,
Also one of the best composers of all time in movies.
What I found interesting, I watched the audio commentary for this on the Blu-ray, and Deborah Hill talks about some of the things they did with the cameras. So in this scene, we're talking about when it's following Tommy Doyle, when Michael Myers is following Tommy Doyle. It's a wide-angle shot, so you're looking at it for like with this whole world. There's a whole world happening, and by the end of the film, it's a close shot. She's in the closet, like being stalked by him, and it's this claustrophobia. So they start with that wide angle lens, and then
Yeah.
it becomes this focused lens by the end of it, and it's drawing you in throughout the film. It just draws you in, and Deborah Hill she mentions all of this stuff.
Yeah,
on
and it
that.
mirrors nicely the proximity to which Michael Myers is to the threats as the movie goes along, right? He's quite far away and he gets closer and closer and eventually he's killing and following. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think we're skipping ahead again, but if we're going to talk about the most effective bits in terms of horror, I think when she runs across from the house, Lindsay's house, to the other house and has to bang on the door and get Tommy
and he's just walking
and the music's swelling and he's like slowly walking towards her, and she's like desperately shouting for Tommy, lazy ass Tommy, to get his way.
Mate, leave him alone. He was sleeping. He's like a kid.
Come on, he didn't sense the context, man. She was screaming, but yeah, I think that's one of the most effective scares in movies of that time.
And that shot is beautiful as well. It's I mostly like the cinematography more in the day, but that is my favorite one at night time.
Yeah,
because he's illuminated by the lights of the Wallace house, right? And he's walking towards.
It's masterfully lit. Yeah. And also, like Jamie Lee Curtis is great in, like when she first discovers the body, she kind of whimpers. She doesn't go for the full scream straight away, and that brings you in. And then she sees the next body, and then she screams, and that's like so involving, and it's so like a part of what makes that entire scene raise in tension, and you get her more and more like losing her mind, trying to get to safety, trying to find anywhere she can go that's some semblance of safety, and the music's swelling the entire way. It's brilliant. Yeah.
I know. So just back where you were talking about before, and the scene with Michael stalking them and everything. One of the things it always gets me every single time I watch it is where Tommy gets bullied by those kids, falls on the pumpkin, then he runs, and then you'd like, and so different kid that runs, isn't it? And like.
Yeah,
and
Lonnie.
That's one of the most effective jump scares.
And it's a jump scare. And every single time, I've watched this countless times, and every single time I still go, oh, fuck, like that.
Yeah.
It's just like, and those little bits of the score he does in these moments, like the, like that. The sting.
Much less cat-like when you do it. But yeah, I mean, that's another scene with like really strong kind of quotable, memorable lines. I love the minimalism of the things said. They're very simple, but they're very effective. Like the kids saying, "The boogeyman's gonna get you. The boogeyman's gonna get you." It's brilliant. I love it. Yeah. And
it's like this. Halloween allows these sort of things to happen. Like it, on the one hand, it's all fiction and. It's like the boogeyman, and then the boogeyman is literally right there with them. It's the confusion that the characters face throughout the film. Like Laurie will face so much confusion because it could be her friends playing tricks on her, and on the other hand, it might be this stalker who she's definitely seen, but has she seen it, or is it one of her friends? Like,
that's why it's genius, the setting of Halloween. I don't know how many movies came out before the set of Halloween.
None, literally none.
This was so they were surprised when they could film, but then when they could call this film Halloween because it had never been used in the context of a movie.
Yeah, you would think. I mean, I don't know when Halloween was popularized as like a holiday or a trick-or-treating thing.
Well, surely way before 78.
Yeah, exactly. It must have been because it was already a well-established thing. They didn't have to explain trick-or-treating or like going to people's houses and stuff. But like just the sheer choice of setting it then is perfect for the slasher, even though the slasher wasn't like a full genre at the time. Purely because it's built in a time where people are going to try and trick and spook each other. People are going to like second guess scary things they see, just because it's a time when people dress up and people try and trick each other and spook each other.
Yeah.
And it's a time when kids are going to get a little bit spooked. There's horror movies on the TV, so she's like playing off what Tommy says about the boogeyman coming to get him or the boogeyman being outside, purely because it's Halloween. If it was in the middle of March, she might have been like, well,
or maybe
why
this
is
more serious.
Yeah, it's genius.
Oh yeah, and the other thing I was going to say is that I love that every time Loomis is on screen again, like it's just these iconic things and lines, you know.
Yeah, everything he says,
his eyes, you know.
Yeah,
and he's in the house.
Do you know the story? Do you know the story about that monologue?
No, go for it.
So apparently, when he was in college, John Carpenter, you know this. He was doing a psychology course, I think.
Oh yeah,
it's like a case study, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he went to a mental institute and met a teenager, and that was exactly
his description.
Yeah, basically about the evil dead black eyes, and he just like transplanted that right onto Loomis, like really cool. Incidentally, this sequence when he's stalking the girls has one of my favorite little pieces of John Carpenter trivia, which you may also know. So when Laurie sees Michael behind the bush, and she's with Annie, then Annie like runs to go and see if there's anything behind the bush, and then she pretends that there's someone there. It cuts, and in one of the cuts to Annie, you can see this like big old plume of smoke go across the screen. And apparently John Carpenter was just off frame, chain smoking, and his smoke got
And
into
he's
the tape.
adding to the movie.
Yeah.
It's like me on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just every single time I see that cut and I see that little bit of
just
smoke
picture
come
the
in,
man himself,
just
yeah.
right slightly off frame, just
Yeah, I'm
like
not even
chain
sure what he
smoke.
looked like in the 70s.
He looked
I'm so
cool,
used
man.
to
He did look cool. He had the
looking
little
like an old
moustache
man.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He looks cool now, man. I'd
does
love
look-
to go and see him play his music. and
Yeah, I know. That would
Yeah.
be fantastic.
Amazing, yeah.
Halloween night finds Laurie babysitting two children, Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, while Linda and Annie engage in more carnal.
Carnell.
Caramel? Colonel?
Colonel! Halloween night finds Laurie babysitting two children, Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, while friends Linda and Annie engage in other activities. Michael soon murders both girls along with Linda's boyfriend, strategically displaying their corpses inside the darkened Wallace home. Unable to reach her friends by phone, a concerned Laurie puts the children to bed and goes across the street to investigate. She is horrified to discover her murdered friends inside. Michael attacks a terrified Laurie, slashing her arm and pushing her down a flight of stairs. She escapes back to the Doyle household, though her attacker follows. Laurie and Michael engage in a series of violent confrontations until he finally gains the upper hand by choking her. Tommy and Lindsay run, screaming from the house, which catches Loomis's attention.
We're running
Well, we
through
have a lot to talk about.
40 minutes of the movie here. I don't know, something to pick out from that huge span of time. Another scene I love is when he kills the dog, and you don't see it, but Annie's like, Lindsay, the dog's barking again.
And then you just hear the whimper.
He's got
Never mind.
He's got a date.
Love it.
a hot date.
Dialogue, yeah.
Do you know how they did?
Do you know? Sorry, just follow on from that. Lindsay seems like such a cool kid. Like she's ignoring everything in that scene. She's just watching horror movies. She's just loving
just
it.
chilling out. She's watching the thing from that world.
the Howard,
whatever.
the Howard Hawks film.
You know how they did that scene with the dog? You know, when you see the dog just struggle down? It's actually in slow motion. It's just the handler picking it up, and then they slowed it down. So it looks like the dog is actually
Like going limp.
going limp, when
Yeah,
actually it's
yeah.
just being picked up and stuff. Yeah.
I think that like of all the characters, Annie is my favorite. And I think
Totally.
no, that's not Annie. That's
No,
Linda.
I know. I'm just saying.
Don't confuse everyone.
I prefer Linda.
You
Linda's
confused all of us
better.
there.
Linda's great.
Well, I'm sorry for my curveball. It was too curvy. Yeah.
Like she doesn't have. Stop curving us out, mate. Stop throwing curveballs.
Okay. Fastball next time.
Yeah, Annie's my favorite character. And I find her death, I find it really sad. I'm really engaged with the character, and I find it so sad. It's not my favorite kill in the film.
No keys.
Yeah, but it's
It's quite brutal for the first kill.
It is brutal.
If
yeah.
anything, is it more brutal than Linda's? Arguable. I don't know. There's more blood in Annie's,
I would say
think.
that Linda's probably more brutal.
How does Linda die again?
Linda's strangled
wrapped
with
in
the
the cord of
phone.
the phone.
Yeah.
That's it. They're pretty similar, to be fair. They both get strangled. It's funny how you always think of Michael Myers killing people with knives, and he I know he slits.
Well, he
Annie's
does.
throat.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I know he does slit her
But
throat.
the phone cord is a
Yeah.
breath of fresh air, even though it's like the second kill. I
Yes.
guess. Yeah.
Breathless of,
Yeah,
of fresh air.
A breath, no breaths of fresh air. Yeah, yeah, and obviously the like classic kill where he pins him to the door.
I mean, that's the most
is
iconic
like
kill. It's really
the
cool.
famous one. Yeah,
Also, what the hell is going on with that guy? Why is he talking about taking Lindsay's clothes off?
Yeah.
What's the reason for him
I'm
saying
not
that?
sure about that joke.
Do you know? It's, yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, do you know why? Have you in the joke? Do you know?
No, I don't have
No,
a clue.
I
He
thought
just
it might
sort
be
of
in the
says
book.
it.
It's
No,
It's just Bob making some kind of funny joke.
just Bob being Bob.
it's like it's a bit off, isn't it?
Strange, isn't it?
So, how are you going to defend him?
Huh?
Yeah. David
What's
Koresh.
your defense?
Maybe wanted to give her a bath or something. I had to give her a bath before bed.
Oh, that's. Oh, that's so seedy.
Sounds a bit unclean.
Just helping Linda. It's innocent. But he has a cool death.
Yeah, I find it interesting that he's the only man killed and he's the only man we see, because Paul.
Well, he kills
like
he kills a
million
mechanic,
times.
doesn't he? And you see the corpse of
Yeah,
the
but it's not an
mechanic.
on-screen death.
Yeah.
And it's not really like particularly relevant to the plot that he kills him.
Well, that's how he gets the jumpsuit.
Yeah. But it's quite interesting. Like a hardware store would have sold a possible mechanic's jumpsuit anyway.
No, he
So
just
it's
took what he could.
It's a
when
little
he's,
bonus.
Yeah.
He went
kill.
into the garage, went into the bathroom, and he got the suit from the guy. Goes, dirty, dirty girl. See what?
Is that what?
What are you talking
In
about?
the Rob Zombie remake.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah. He goes into this
I
like
thought you were
garage.
inventing your own like headcanon. Your own like fan version of what Michael Myers did.
What he does in his dreams.
No, there's a guy in the bathroom. He goes into the bathroom in this garage.
I'm not sure I know the Rob Zombie one so well.
I stopped watching it before this scene.
And this guy's got a porn mag. Goes in there,
Yeah.
opens, flicks through
I
it. and
kind
it's
of remember.
It's really seedy as well,
dirty,
isn't it, the
dirty
Rob Zombie
girl.
one?
And then Michael's
Yeah.
like knocking on the door, and he's like, "I'm gonna be here for a while," and then he like destroys it basically.
I mean, that film does have some fun quotes, like the trash bag
Dirty, dirty
stepfather.
girl. Yeah,
He's like,
oh, he's great.
"Don't make me crawl over there and skull fuck the shit out of you."
Yeah.
It's so good.
Well, that's Rob Zombie's MO.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah.
Like, basically, he does some fun dialogue, but it's the rest of the stuff that doesn't really.
They're all just like
add up.
disgusting, horrible people. You're like rooting for Michael.
That's
the
why
whole
Devil's
time.
Rejects is his standout, because it's got the great dialogue
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
actually has a good movie.
Well, he just like
around it.
leans into it. Like, yeah.
to the full extreme. And you got Sid Haig in there. I don't remember whether Sid Haig is in the
He is in the Halloween
remake.
remake. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I can't remember where we were. I lost. I really fucked us over
the
there.
mechanic died.
Oh yeah. You know, in that scene, Loomis was meant to have a wife. So when he's on the phone in that scene, he was meant to have actually been calling his wife, going, "Have you slept today? Have you been sleeping?" And
it was Pleasance's idea, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
it was.
To remove that and not have any context.
And he
in a
asked
similar manner to
Carpenter-
Michael Myers. Yeah.
apparently Donald Pleasance was a consummate professional on set. He didn't question anything. He just went with it. But there's one thing he was like, he doesn't have a wife. He's not going to have a wife. He's so obsessed with his work.
Well, he was the veteran of the production.
Yeah, he
I
taught,
don't know
like-
a lot about the production crew, but he'd been in
Relative-
movies more than Carpenter and every.
Well, yeah, I heard that John Carpenter learned a lot about acting from him.
Yeah.
and he was a professional. They only had him for a week, right? And he was a professional, but he would chime in and give.
And well,
like,
Carpenter, in the audio commentary, it's quite funny. He says, "Well, he asked me to do this." And I couldn't say no because he was such a distinguished actor.
Oh yeah.
Like, I couldn't say no.
He was
to
quite
him.
nervous to work with Donald Pleasance, right?
yeah.
They became like fast friends right afterwards, and they worked together.
I would
a lot
imagine the man
afterwards.
has a little bit of a presence. I
for
like
sure.
to think that he talks a bit like Loomis, just in
Oh,
his
no,
everyday. Like,
He does. He
No,
does.
he has more gravitas.
Headcanon.
He has more gravitas off screen than he does as Loomis. Like
Yeah.
he is like that all the
in
time.
a Christopher Lee manner.
Yeah.
The
like,
full,
really,
the full British
yeah. When he talks,
gravitas.
like when they interview him, you listen when he talks. Yeah, like he's just like that all the time.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon to Linda's death?
It's it's a good one. And I guess it's nice that he like mixes up his MO a little
Yeah,
bit.
it's another one with a sprinkling of comedy as well.
Yeah. Do you know that? You know, like when she's in the bed and then Michael comes in wearing the bed sheet.
Yep.
And then she like reveals her
Like
boobs.
what you see.
Yeah, that was apparently improvised. She was just feeling
Yeah,
it.
she was meant to say something else, but
Yeah, and she was
preferred
like
saying that.
Yeah, she was just having fun with it. Yeah.
And Carpenter was like, "Yeah, I like that.
Hell yeah,
Prefer
keep that
It's
in.
funny."
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
and apparently like when she was getting
Garroted.
garroted, she had to like tell the guy playing Michael to do it tighter because it was tickling her so much. That she kept like
on the
coughing, like
verge of
laughing. All the time. But yeah, it's a good death.
It's a harrowing death because
It
you can
is.
hear a friend on the other end of the phone.
Yeah,
Like,
and
going,
she can't
what's
like.
going on? Well,
Yeah.
here we go. Because she thinks she's having sex at first, doesn't
Yeah.
she?
Oh yeah, and then she thinks it's Annie like making a noise again. Could you imagine like hearing your friend not being able to call out and then having your friend think that you're just
Yeah.
like taking the piss just while you're dying?
And you think
Yeah.
not in
Haunting.
years, and not until the very last moment does she know it's Michael. Like, to her, that's her boyfriend because she's still wearing...
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't even have a clue that's Michael Myers.
Well, yeah, she turns his back to him, back to him, doesn't she? Because she feels so safe. She's confirmed in her head that it's Bob. And
it's not until her actual... Basically, she might not even know that it was Michael who killed it, because by the time the cloth comes off his mask,
yeah. She's up in heaven, like... Bob.
You're like,
Bob is not going to heaven. When he's saying things like that about Lindsay, he's not going to heaven.
And then we got the scene you really love, Mike, with the running back into the house and that whole sequence. I mean, I was watching that with Tommy Doyle going, come on, like, get down there. The way he like wipes his eyes and you're like, fucking move.
Yeah, it's a perfectly built scene, especially so early for that raw suspense, that Hitchcockian kind of pushed even more past what Alfred Hitchcock did of like, come on, like we're in a stressful situation and we're relying on the person doesn't know what's going on. Yeah. And
around this time, Laurie is also really frustrating because she's seen the boogeyman all day. Like, she has been going, oh my God, there's something going on. No one's listening to me. And then we get into this scenario, and she's now telling Tommy.
She decides to cross the street and go and try check the house out. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
She's a smart, rational person, though, isn't she? I don't think she's liable to freak out like the children would, or I mean, there's not a lot of adult freakouts at all in this movie, other than literally. Well,
Michael keeps himself to himself and doesn't show anyone he's there until he's killing them.
It's way too late.
And it's only Laurie who gets that chance to be fight or flight type scenario.
None of them actually see him before they're attacked, which is another reason why I think like Laurie has some kind of power, some kind of connection. I mean, we're going to talk about the fate thing, right? But
yeah,
that's what makes her unique among the victims.
And I tell you, the only thing that annoys me in this whole sequence, this whole thing, is where his face is revealed behind her in the house, and then he tries to stab her and just grazes her arm.
Yeah,
I can't tell you how much that annoys me, because there's no way Michael Myers, the boogeyman, the shape, is going to go, oops.
But he already missed her once, like when he stabbed the sofa. Like, that's how. I mean, he should have killed her. Like, he suddenly becomes like a bumbling idiot.
Well, that happens before, right?
No, like this. You're talking about when she's already stabbed him in the eye.
No, this is before, when she's in the other house.
This is the first contact with him when she falls down the stairs.
Oh, right.
In the other house.
Slashed by him. Yeah.
When she finds the bodies.
Oh, right.
And it rips the bodies, and then she just goes down the stairs. Like, could they have not done that a little bit better? Because that's the one thing that irks me about the film. It's the same with The Godfather when you see that punch.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so far away. And I'm like, oh, you're just taking me out of it right there with that one moment. And otherwise, to me, pretty fucking perfect films.
Yeah, a little bit jarring. Maybe a slight minor, but I don't know. I can explain it away in my head canon for no reason whatsoever. Yeah. I'm just happy with the thrill ride. Yeah. Because that happens in a lot of horror movies, right? Unless they're trying to do something fancy, the protagonist has shaky ground for some of the survivals that they go through, and this is no different.
Yeah, but I don't think it's like okay to just accept that, because like it can be done, right? There are slasher movies where that's not true, right? Have you got an example? Yeah, Scream. She doesn't make any major mistakes where like she should be dead to rights. Like Laurie was dead to rights there, and should be dead.
But Scream's kind of a cheating choice, which is purposefully being meta and is going to think about those things.
Yeah, but like
in the production of the movie.
It's successful at being meta because it apes the thing that it's trying to do. Like that doesn't diminish the writing just because they write it better than what they're imitating.
No, but it means that they were more fully aware of avoiding things like that.
Everyone was aware. Like writers know. Like you made my voice squeak. Trying to defend Scream.
Go through reverse puberty. Trying to argue with me.
Your bullshit opinions making my voice go backwards.
I mean,
Black Christmas
it could have been written differently as well. Black Christmas doesn't have any of those kind of scenes.
Hell no.
Well, we'll cover it at some point.
I hope we do.
Maybe we'll circle back round to that, but it may have been written in a different way, and maybe it just the view of it we see makes it a little bit less believable because they wanted to hide Michael until the last moment. So if we had a better shot of Michael, which would have hurt the
It's
horror,
it's possible.
it
Yeah.
would have been a more
It's
believable
possible.
swing
Yeah.
or believable angle, perhaps.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah,
Either way, it is a minor thing overall. That one.
correct.
Yeah.
I still think this is a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 movie with these two tiny
Yeah, I mean, it's
faults.
just the one thing in the
Yeah.
movie that has always annoyed me. In otherwise a movie that does all the right things for me, apart
Yeah.
from that very little bit, which is why it annoys me because it is one tiny fraction of a film, which otherwise I totally love.
Well, maybe it needs
Totally.
a bit more critical analysis because it happens so fast, right? If you slowed it down, is she already moving when he makes his slash?
I
'Cause
watched
she
it a
falls
little
down
bit,
the stairs, right? So
and
she's
there's no
clearly
chance.
in movement.
There's no chance he's missing that shot unless he needs to go to Specsavers. Like there's no
Maybe the
chance.
mask,
Maybe he does.
yeah, maybe he was a bit disgruntled and the mask was like a bit
Or-
squiffy and he couldn't see properly.
Or he put on those glasses of
Oh, he's got the Bob
Bob's glasses on, and
yeah.
sometimes you put on glasses that are too much for you, and you're like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps
So he's like
still like-
super goofy then.
yeah.
Just keep it on.
Oops.
Or there was a gust of wind and the sheet hit him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just like his setup in that scenario where he's
Yeah,
like,
the effort that he takes.
yeah, but the little time he has to do that in between, like on the phone
Yeah.
with Laurie, and then she walks over. I just imagine. Do you ever imagine Michael Myers like having to rush around like a madman? Like, oh my god, I've got to get this in place. I've got to do
Yeah.
this.
What do you think is going to be like really camp about it? Like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my
The
god.
Leslie Vernon effect.
Yeah,
Training
Leslie
the
Vernon.
speed walking and that kind of thing. Yeah.
But I just love that idea of Michael Myers going, oh shit, I've got to be, oh my god, oh the tombstone's not quite right.
Yeah. Glancing at his watch every second.
Yeah. And it was like sort of, as he walks around, he must have to sprint at times to get from place to place.
Yeah, his thighs must be massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of driving around, and in the movie, he's just been like speed walking round in circles in that outdoor zone,
Yeah,
perfecting it. Yeah,
Oh, there is a. Sorry, I just remembered one thing about that thing. Just before she's Laurie gets slashed.
microphone gets stabbed.
Yeah. When the camera's pointing at Laurie and she's looking at the camera, and then Michael was in the doorway in shadow behind.
Yep.
And the cinematographer, he had a light on a dimmer,
Yeah.
and he cranks it up like slowly, just to slowly fade Michael in, just basically to simulate like your eyes adjusting to the dark.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really creepy, right? The way, because the mask comes in first.
yeah.
And you're like, whoa. And then it
yeah,
goes,
and the whiteness as well.
yeah.
with the complete black. It's brilliant. Yeah.
But Jamie Lee had a lot to do with that scene before, with that moment there, and how she ended up in that point. So she spoke with John Carpenter about, well, how is she going to go from seeing that body on the bed to then being moved across to see the body in the cupboards to then getting out there? And so it was actually, they talked it through. There was no sort of way of doing it before they actually did it. And they were like, okay, if I act like this, if Laurie reacts like this, then she'll move to here and then she'll get there. So they very logically plotted it out in that scenario. So
to get her where she needed to be at the end.
to get her where she
Yeah.
needed to be. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they all the bits are in place. It was just how does Laurie, what's going on in Laurie's mind to get her to that moment
Yeah,
there.
I think it is the strongest bit of acting from Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie, in her first role as well, where she's kind of like whimpering and looks like a scared little girl, basically doesn't know where to go or what's happening. Yeah, it's totally believable that she takes those steps backwards and does end up in that circumstance. Yeah, which makes it a bit better because it's not like he's booby trapped it, so that she's
No.
definitely going to walk into these bodies or whatever.
And I also love the idea because, you know, when he drops down and he's like swings out of the cupboard upside down, he was actually hanging on there like with his knees and like pulling up on the bar until that moment where she opens it goes. Ooh. So that was just him swooping down and using his strength to stay up until that moment. Yeah.
But I want to talk about the fact that Michael Myers eats dogs, and I've only just realised that he eats dogs in the movie.
I feel like you've just never watched
Like,
the film before.
No, I've seen this movie
No,
like
no, no,
12
no,
times.
never seen it
Maybe I
before.
just don't remember that scene, but he eats a dog.
He's hungry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he got
I mean-
hungry.
Yeah, I remember the scene now. But I've never really picked up on that. You never see him, like we talked about this before, but you never see him eating at all in the entire franchise. Like he's an inhuman thing.
Yeah, it's another kind of weakness like that
But then
humanizes
he eats
him.
a dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they could have easily just not like
It's a weird
explained it whatsoever.
yeah,
Right? That-
It's a somewhat weird addition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Upon reaching the scuffle upstairs, Loomis fires 6 bullets into his patient, sending him tumbling over a balcony. He turns briefly to a sobbing Laurie before looking back to the ground where Michael is no longer laying. As the script tells it, Loomis stares down with a growing fear, then looks out from the house. The backyard, the neighbouring trees, the street, all are empty. There is only the sound of the wind swelling in the Swedes.
In the Swedes.
The Swedes.
Halloween in Sweden.
Yeah, I don't remember any Swedish people, really, but yeah.
There is only the sound of the wind swelling in the trees. Michael is gone.
So I heard that apparently Donald Pleasance went to
There
Carpenter.
was another note from him. Wasn't
Yeah,
it?
and said, I can play this 2 ways. Right, I can play it like I'm surprised he's gone, or I can play it like I'm expecting him to be gone. And they obviously went for the second one. And it's definitely much more impactful, right?
much stronger.
Yeah.
If there's anyone that's going to visualize Michael Myers as this unkillable symbol of evil, it's Loomis, because it's all from what he says, basically.
Exactly,
We
exactly,
have that
yeah.
interpretation of him. And I think the outro is amazing. Especially once Loomis looks down and Michael Myers isn't there and the music kicks in and you just get the whimpers of Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie.
And Michael breathing as well, you hear, don't you? Yeah.
And you just get a flash of the neighborhood before any police have turned up or anything. And it's spooky.
He's nowhere, he's everywhere.
Yeah.
The Michael Myers. That sounds very radio presenter. He's nowhere, he's everywhere. Michael Myers.
That's a tagline. Yeah.
88.4.
That probably came up in the marketing room for one of the
Yeah.
DVD covers. Yeah.
Well, it is funny, the TV trailer, the trailers and everything, they all say, the night he came home. They all start and end with that. There's 3
There's
TV
a lot
slots.
of, it's one of the things I, for some reason, notice in movies. I call them trailer moments. These bits of dialogue that
are going to be in the trailer.
At least in modern movies, they were made for the trailer, maybe not in 1978. But there's a lot of trailer bits, i.e. kind of iconic, foreshadowy language used, dialogue used.
Yeah, dialogue that you can take out of context and
and
set an atmosphere.
compose in a kind of montage of clips.
Yeah.
This movie is rife with those. It's full of those. Almost everything said in the first half of the movie is basically foreshadowing, especially from what Laurie says. Yeah.
I know, I miss it.
When she says...
It's like a car crash.
yeah. When she says, Annie says, is that Davey, whatever his name was?
The mechanic. Yeah.
And then Laurie says, I don't think so, is powerful trailer moment. That's 10 out of 10. Yeah. But carry on.
I was just saying, I miss the voiceover guys in trailers. The night you came home.
It's
possibly
great.
that one guy. Is
I
that one
feel
guy?
like it was that one voice, definitely.
And it's white text on black background interspersed with little scenes. Yeah.
So, I mean, the plot is quite basic, isn't it? It's quite an interesting little story,
but
it's a really simple one, but it's a good one for that reason.
Yeah, well, as it creates the slasher mold, they're built with simple plots, simple antagonists, simple fears, simple characters, and this basically
in a simple
sets the mold
town
for that. Yeah, in a simple town called Haddonfield.
Well, I mean, I don't know necessarily. Yeah. Firstly, I don't know if there was a slasher mold at this point.
This kind of set the
mold. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I don't think necessarily that slashers have to be simple, but I think that the simplicity is a massive strength of this film. Because the core theme of fate and evil is a simple, it's best communicated simply. I think having a simple vehicle to communicate those themes, it makes it a universal story, right? I don't think slashers in general have to be simple, and they can be convoluted. They can be twists and all kinds of stuff.
Totally not. But a lot of slashers are. Totally.
Yeah.
But a lot of slashers are.
Yeah, but
and that helps them, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, but I think, that's almost like learning the wrong lesson. I think it works specifically for this story, but I don't think that every slasher has to be.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, an accomplished director, an accomplished writer can do it as complex or simple as they want and tell a good story and have an effective movie. But I think this is the blueprint for a minimalist slasher movie done well, where you've got this kind of abstract killer that doesn't have really anything about him apart from the way he looks and the way he behaves. And you can supplant basically your own fear into it. It gets straight to the core of like what's scary, like the other, the unknown, the faceless, the unrecognizable, the strange. Yeah.
So what I find fascinating now is, I didn't know much about this before researching a bit, was the pre and post production of this film. So if you want to, we can talk about that for a little bit, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's basically like the inception of the movie. So John Carpenter had done one feature film at least before this, which was Assault on Precinct 13.
He'd actually done Dark Star before.
Oh, Dark Star as well. Yeah, you're right. Was that before Assault on Precinct 13? It was, right? Yeah.
That was his first movie.
Wasn't that like basically a student film, or was that something else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was a student film, but it's like extremely low budget.
Yeah, like a sci-fi, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking like the lowest budget imaginable. I don't know what the budget was, but probably in the thousands or tens of thousands, I imagine.
But it didn't do super well, or did it?
No, I'm not sure it got wide release. My dad somehow saw it.
No, really? Cool.
I don't know how late on, probably in the 70s or 80s or whatever, and loved it. And it is a good movie. It's pretty great, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, Assault on Precinct 13, did it get a wider release then?
Yeah, I think that was definitely a movie known at the time.
Yeah, I think so.
And it definitely helped that it was a very controversial movie at the time, which spread the word of mouth. And it's quite brutal as well. I mean,
yes,
yeah. It's not truly a horror movie, but there's horror-ish elements.
It's like horror adjacent. I mean,
yeah, there's a murder towards the start of The Ice Cream Man that's quite brutal and shocking for the time. Yeah,
I love that film. I like it more than Halloween.
It's my favourite Carpenter movie.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
oh.
I think it's better than The Thing, personally.
Ooh, well, it's up there for me. But yeah, so after the success anyway of Assault on Precinct 13, independent film producer Irvin Yablans and financier Mustafa Akkad sought out Carpenter. So they had the idea originally.
Well, he did. Mustafa Akkad was brought on
a bit later, was it?
A bit later, because he was brought on as basically a silent third party on the film.
Well, to bring the money in.
So he just brought the money in at that point in time. He obviously later becomes like the godfather,
He's like
the grandfather.
The main,
And his family still run it to this day, don't they? So I think it's his son now who's running.
Well, he loves Michael Myers.
Yeah.
He wants him to live forever, apparently. That's,
I love that.
What I'd heard was a lot of the movies he was producing at the time were the budget of financing Halloween, like for a day or 2 days of shooting, and they'd have like loads and loads of days. So this was like a tiny thing to finance that, as a rich man that wanted to get richer, put his money in. And then, as you say, when it was successful, he was the big charging point for like, well, if it was successful, why not make 20 of them?
Money, yeah.
Exactly.
So the original concept was about a murderer killing babysitters, right? And they
he wrote it on a plane from, I think, London or Tokyo or something like this.
Or Carpenter, yeah. So they
not Carpenter.
Oh, the
initial plan.
Plans
was done on a plane.
Yeah. Because it's really just like a napkin pitch, right? It's just like a one sentence concept, basically.
Yeah.
And they paid John Carpenter $10,000 to direct, write, co-write, and score the movie. And this is like where the idea of like Halloween comes in. They find out that Halloween has never been used. Like literally the word Halloween has never been used in a movie title. And
which is another big influence anyway, because the idea of using like a public holiday or like an event day, a name for a thing like prom night and
that's the thing is that like Carpenter was specifically inspired by Black Christmas, like you mentioned. He actually went to Bob Clark originally. I think this was actually before Yablans and Akkad approached him. He went to Bob Clark to basically see if he had an idea for a sequel to Black Christmas, like basically find an excuse to get the killer and bring him out on another holiday.
Yep.
So it was kind of like the confluence of those two things. So like he basically got paid to write a story about a babysitter murderer, and then already had this kind of idea in his head about setting it on a holiday. And yeah, you know, they were trying to ape like the kind of success of like The Exorcist, The Omen, and yeah, again Black Christmas.
But Bob Clark, he does say that
not plagiarism.
Yeah, he does say that.
He says specifically not plagiarism.
In 2004, he stated, he does not copy my movie. Halloween is entirely John Carpenter's and one of the greats of its kind. He's always been very stern on the fact that...
Yeah, it's clearly influenced by, but I don't think anyone would really claim that it's plagiarism or ripping off.
Yeah,
you could definitely claim that for Friday the 13th, but you couldn't claim that.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's a slippery slope anyway, right? Then because everything is inspired by everything, you know, what comes before, right?
Yeah,
like, that's just how like the creative process works. So Carpenter's then girlfriend Deborah Hill co-wrote it with him, and
well, she actually wrote the initial draft first, right?
Oh, did
she? He had to go and film a TV show for a week, so he's got nothing to do with that initial script. That initial script is all Deborah Hill. Carpenter then brings his influence onto it later, but Hill came up with the idea of then using that structure which was there for her, wrote this screenplay and used her. She's a huge influence because she grew up in the real Haddonfield.
Yeah, New Jersey.
Yeah. And she used that name Haddonfield.
And she was a babysitter as well.
She was a babysitter.
Yeah.
So those are the two of the biggest influences on the film, and she did write that initial script.
Yeah, and apparently like all of her dialogue for like the female characters, like the teenage girls, was relatively unchanged, right? Like she basically got sole credit.
She wrote that stuff, so it's a lot of it is quite genuine, and it's not just from a bloke trying to figure out what teenage girls talk about.
Yeah, maybe it's like the geek in me or whatever, but I wish we had access to, for a lot of movies, but this one as well, the different stages of the writing process, and we had access to the initial draft and then what she
before Carpenter had his mitts all over it as well. It'd been interesting.
Yeah, to like peel back the different versions of it. Or like just see the notes, or just kind of like have lines like annotated with like
version control existed back then.
That's what I was thinking of. Honestly, that's what I was thinking of.
What's also sorry.
Yeah, I'd love to see Carpenter's pull request, see what he submitted.
What I also find quite amazing in this early stage of John Carpenter's career is that he's able to get creative control on this movie. So that's part of his condition of coming on to it. It wasn't only the money. He was like, I can do it, but I want creative control. For such a young filmmaker who's like 30-something years old, that's a crazy request, and they granted it to him to do it in his vision. And it's part of the reason why Halloween is probably as popular and is well regarded now.
Is that because like the overall budget of 300,000 was relatively small?
Yeah, and they were probably desperate for a director to be able to come on and go, I can do this for $300,000.
Yeah,
No, not many directors who are big time are going to go, I can do that, because they will lose that creative spark. You know, they've done things in such a way for such a long time. There's no way you could do a low budget movie. If you're coming in from a student background where you've done student films and you've done one other film, you can scratch and claw your way up and find ways of doing it. You have friends who might lend you a car. You know, you got a friend who might have
Carpenter
something.
made a lot of low budget movies. Like his 2 movies before this were low budget, and I don't think he's ever really had like a massive budget movie, to my reckoning. And I think he's always wanted creative control, because all of those movies are very distinctive, at least in his like golden period from Assault on Precinct 13 all the way to They Live.
Yeah, I mean, even like through into the 90s, I would say it feels like a John Carpenter movie, for better or for worse at that point, I guess.
Yeah, well, I was omitting those purely because they're not quite as good.
Yeah.
And I've got it written down here. It was Carpenter who brought in Mr. Farrakhan. Apparently.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there was, and he apparently wasn't initially interested because he was filming an epic, a big epic like Western type film. Huge film beforehand.
Yeah, I read that. I think that's the one where he was spending a day, almost the budget of like financing the entirety of Halloween, but I can't remember what the name was.
I don't remember either. But apparently, Jamie Lee Curtis was picked by Deborah Hill.
Yes.
And she was the second choice, right? I think.
Annie Lockhart was the first
Annie
choice,
Lockhart,
who turned down the role. So Carpenter had his choice.
Annie Lockhart in mind, yeah.
Yeah, but turned it down.
Yeah,
And, well, because this was Jamie Lee Curtis's first role, right? And
first feature role. Anyway.
First feature role, yeah.
She was.
But she of course like has famous parents.
Yeah, correct. And it's definitely. I mean, now we can say it is iconic and a wise move, but only because she's also a good actress. But yeah, casting someone that's the daughter of, basically like one of the most famous slasher women in the entirety of film,
and the sex symbol of the 60s, Tony Curtis. Like, it's crazy.
It was a risk, and she was quite reluctant, right, Jamie Lee Curtis, to play Laurie, because she was supposedly a lot more like the other girls. But I don't think that really comes through in the performance. I think that she
plays it brilliantly.
She is Laurie. Yeah,
it's very strong. Yeah.
And she thought she was going to get kicked off the set after the first day as well.
I'm terrible. Yeah.
And then Carpenter rings her up, and it's her housemate who gets the phone and said, "Oh, it's John Carpenter." And in her mind, she's gone, "Oh God, they're going to fire me. They're firing me." And actually, he just rings up and says, "That was a really good shoot today. Well done." Like, and apparently that's Jamie Lee Curtis in a nutshell. Is that she's got the actor thing in her, which a lot of creative people like that do, which is this insecurity. I think it's very tough to be creative in any way without a huge insecurity and the need for someone to tell you're doing all right, because that's what it's all about when you're an actor or anything like that. You
do it for the audience, right? Surely.
Part of it is the audience.
It can be a death curse if you believe your own hype creatively, I think.
Definitely,
because you're going to surround yourself with yes men, because you're going to be certain that what you're doing is right. It's like the George Lucas effect, basically, is what I'm saying.
So the character of Linda was written for PJ Soles, specifically because of her performance in Carrie. She's not like very high build in Carrie. I haven't seen Carrie for a while.
She's definitely. I've seen it a couple of times in the last few years, and she's definitely in there. Like, she's definitely got a prominent role, prominent enough that I went, "Ooh,
oh right,
that's her from Halloween."
Oh, you recognise her?
Yeah, I recognised her. Yeah.
So John Carpenter got 10K, like I said, and Donald Pleasance got 20. But they could only film with him for a week. And apparently Pleasance, at least according to my research, only agreed to it because his daughter, he was in a band. She's a guitarist. She was a big fan of the score of Assault on Precinct 13. It was like, you got to work with John Carpenter.
Great taste.
Yeah, for sure. So they filmed in California, not Illinois. And to be fair, you can mostly not tell. There are a couple of shots with like palm trees in the background.
It's funny in the audio when you watch it with Jamie Lee Curtis talking about it, because she's like, "Look, see how cold that looks with all the brown leaves and like blowing through." And then the next shot, it pans to like the trees all full of blossom. He's like, "No way, the trees will be like that in October. No way."
It's a lot more noticeable that it's not Halloween night than it's not Illinois.
Yeah, it's true.
Jamie Lee's really funny in that audio commentary.
I'd have to listen to that.
She just goes like, "Oh, this bit is so cool. This bit is so cool."
So is it Jamie Lee Curtis, John Carpenter,
and Deborah Hill?
Oh man, I didn't know it was so stacked.
That's
cool. It's a fully
like,
stacked. All three of them are on it.
Yeah, because I kind of lost interest in audio commentaries when I kept looking up like my favorite movies, and then it'd just be. I mean, I don't want to disparage people, but I want the big players, man. I want the director on there. I want the star of the movie. So that sounds amazing.
But it's a really good audio commentary. I recommend it totally.
Yeah. Was that filmed when was that filmed?
I have no idea, because I think it's the 90s. I think that was.
So it's quite retrospective then. Yeah.
It is, because there's a bit in there. I noticed Deborah Hill saying about where the slasher franchise went after this film, and she's. And it's interesting, actually, go off on a tangent here, because she talks about in the 90s, things are a lot rougher than they were in 1978. So she's saying, like, AIDS epidemic is everywhere. There's such bad news everywhere. We need to look at doing films which focus more on the drama than focus more on the gore. Because in her mind, like, she wanted these characters that were redeemable in the end, and that there was some sort of ending for them, a happy-ish ending for some of them, and like less of this. She doesn't specifically say it, but she doesn't seem happy about what
horror has become.
Do you want
Yeah.
more optimism, basically?
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, there's no optimistic ending at the end of Halloween. And
No,
coupling
that's
that
true.
with Texas Chainsaw and
But I
Black
think it's more
Christmas.
so the gore. I think she's more talking about the gore in that.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe it was early
it
90s.
was on
'cause they did
the
actually-
rise, in the early
she's-
90s.
yeah.
It could be the mid 2000s too. 'cause
And she's also talking about
right.
from a very nostalgic point, because she talks about having the movies she grew up with, like the stuff you see during the film, like The Thing, and saying that back then you would go into an outdoor drive-in cinema where that didn't have any gore or blood, and then after Halloween, these teen splatter movies came, and Halloween kind of started that. But she then is saying there's so many horrors in the real world that we have to change how we do horror, less gore and more drama. And she says specifically in that time as a filmmaker in the 1990s. So it must have happened somewhere.
Yeah, I can understand that point of view, but at the same time, I think it's important that movies and horror movies should reflect the real world, and the real world is grotty and horrible. If you set a movie in a certain area of the world or context that would have that, it should be present in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, but in a way, with Halloween...
you can tell exactly the same story with and without gore, though, right?
Well, this is what... Yeah,
Correct.
with Halloween, there
Sometimes
isn't...
implied gore is better.
There is no gore, really. There's nothing other than a bit of blood in two scenes.
Yeah.
There's really nothing within Halloween at all. It's all just in your mind. The horror is in your mind, and that was the whole point. And people bring this up. Like Jamie Lee Curtis brings it up in the audio commentary. She's like, it's amazing how many people speak ill of the film, saying, "Oh, it's too gory," when it actually doesn't have any gore. It's all very much implied and in people's minds. So, in a way, I think it's that the way horror went for Deborah Hill would be that you can imply that it's happening. You don't necessarily have to film it every single time and make it more grotesque and gory and in this torture porn. You don't have to do that, because the mind will work. It will go into overdrive to make something that isn't there.
Which is quite interesting, because Carpenter made The Thing 4 years later, which is a very gory movie. So if he had a larger budget, Halloween might have been more gory, perhaps, or more time to film.
Potentially, yeah, potentially.
Maybe
You never know.
if he got Stan Winston on board, then who knows, right?
Yeah.
But I think
Or
when
Tom Savini, or anyone that was working at that time,
when you've only got that budget though, of 300,000, and you have to think of it in such a way, I think you just have to. They've gone with that, and he talks about Halloween with such passion that it had to be filmed in this way. It's like a moment in time. It's a lightning strike. It's just something that happened. So I can see why they're so insistent on saying that it's not about the gore. It's about the suspension. It's about the suspense created, and about the implied horrors.
But I mean, I haven't seen The Thing for a while, but I think, in my point of view, might be dubious. If we cover The Thing, I might take it back, but I think Halloween's a more successful, scary movie, I think.
No, disagree.
You disagree completely?
Yes, like the practical effects rightly take all the attention, but it's first and foremost a thriller about like not knowing who's infected. It's people not trusting each other.
Yeah.
Like,
but is that scarier than the complete unknown stranger following and
Murder without reason.
ununderstandable evil?
Well, this is like the perfect predator that's hidden unrecognizably, whereas Michael Myers is recognizably a human.
But surely that is more...
As in not human, not a human.
Yeah.
Surely that is more disturbing, that it is human on human.
Yeah, I think it's subjective.
Torture
it's
and
completely
horror.
subjective whether a human being is scarier than a...
Like the Cyberman.
There it is.
Yeah. See, I got it in early, the Cyberman reference.
yeah.
You thought that would be the only one.
We've done our Doctor Who
No,
reference.
no.
We can move away.
It doesn't count unless Joe
Whereas
does
the
it.
thing is more like Daleks in not human, an inhuman thing.
Most people find the Daleks scarier than the Cybermen. That is probably true. That's probably true.
I don't find either of them scary personally, but
Do you want to hear like a crazy behind the scenes fact?
I'm ready to be like, shocked and possibly appalled.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on the same wavelength.
Okay, so you already know about them, like
Yeah.
spewing the leaves onto the why?
Well, no, I'm interested.
Spewing
the leaves.
Spewing the leaves.
Crazy. They were spewing them and spewed them all over the street.
Spewing the leaves before he's taken and raking them up. But guess who one of the people raking up the leaves
it's not
was?
so scary when I've read it, but it is scary. Scary. Crazy.
Robert England.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, thank you
Holy
for giving it that
shit.
reaction. I thought that was cool.
That is cool. I didn't know that.
And
he wasn't a complete nobody then, but obviously he wasn't Freddy Krueger.
yeah.
Because Eaten Alive, which has a 10 out of 10 title, by
That's cool.
Toby Hooper, was I think 76 before this movie.
Oh, and England was in that.
Yeah.
Has he basically just done only horror movies his whole life?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time.
Cool.
He must love them. He goes to all of the
play,
Comic-Cons and stuff. But you know, this is a slight tangent as well, but you've seen Kill Bill, right? Where it's my name is Buck and I like to fuck.
Yeah.
That's from
it's from
Eaten
that film.
Alive.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
knew
Robert
it was from
Englund
a
saying
film.
that.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
I don't know. He might have been friends, or he's just in the local area.
Yeah, apparently, he was friends with, like, he was his roommate and was like, "You want to come to California? Like, come to Pasadena?"
Carpenter's roommate.
Oh no, England's roommate at the time. Robert England's roommate.
Who was though? Carpenter was.
No, just like whoever, just somebody. Whoever,
right, somebody on
his roommate
staff.
was, I think,
Yeah,
working on the film and just like come along and just help us out.
Fair enough.
So I mean, Michael Myers is played by a lot of people, as we said, but the quote unquote main actor is Nick Castle.
Yep.
Nick Castle
Yeah.
for the win.
He's the one whose face you see.
No,
No,
Oh, is that a different guy?
that's a different actor. They got someone in prettier.
yeah,
To do
and
that.
that guy's been cancelled
Poor
recently. I
Nick.
looked him up.
Oh, really?
I forgot his name, but I looked him up.
Oh,
yeah.
what did he do?
Murder babysitters.
That'll do it. Yeah.
Eating dogs?
No,
Yeah.
that wasn't part of the script. He just does that and he just filmed it. So Nick Castle was like a friend of Michael Myers.
That's going to get you in trouble.
That'll get you in, a friend of John Carpenter.
Yeah.
He was also an aspiring director.
Which he became, didn't he?
He did,
later
like
became.
relatively successful.
Yeah.
Like 10 or so movies. But anyway, so he was just hanging about, and John Carpenter was like, "Well, if you're going to be hanging about,
Well, he
then-
asked him for experience on set. Can I
Yeah,
come on set? And
yeah.
John Carpenter's like, yeah, well,
Like
if you are
shadowing.
going to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. And he's like, just do something useful. And so they, just put this mask on and just be in these scenes. And he apparently got paid $25 a day to do it. And apparently there was a moment when he had like the actor moment of like saying, "What's my motivation?"
Yeah.
And John Carpenter just said, "Don't act, just walk from here to there."
Yeah.
Perfect.
But they do say, I mean, both Deborah Hill and John Carpenter say about his portrayal is he didn't come back for the second one. They got a stuntman to do the second one. And they say that Castle had rock and roll personality and rock and roll rhythm because he was part of like a musical family. And so he had this way of walking and doing things which was rhythmic and worked for Michael Myers in no way, because they're saying in every film since they've never been able to emulate quite properly Michael Myers within this film.
like
Yeah,
the
it's
way
quite-
he walks.
Yeah, it's quite
Yeah.
interesting because when the character, obviously you don't see his face and he doesn't have any lines. So what you're actually seeing as a performance is his gait and the way he walks.
Yeah.
And the way he's kind of threatening just through his body's movements.
And he does have a certain
Yeah.
style to it that they try to emulate every single time. Even up to the idea of him sitting up behind Laurie in that shot. That's all emulated again and again and again. In H2O, there's a bit where he comes down one-handed behind her in the school when they're inside one of the corridors in the school, and he's above her and comes down. All of this is just emulation of the original portrayal of Michael Myers
Yeah.
by Castle. He has a lot, like, considering he only got paid $25 a day, his portrayal of the character was quite incredible.
I can ask you a question, Joe. You might know the answer. I'm not sure. But was it Castle's idea to do the head tilt when he killed Bob?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I'm not sure.
I'm curious, like, who came up with that, because it's fascinating. That head tilt
Yeah,
is
it
so
is.
fascinating. Like,
It'd be cool if it was, because
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it could be part of his portrayal of the
Yeah.
You
character.
see animals do, isn't it?
yeah.
Like if you make a weird noise or there's something that the dog doesn't understand, they do a head tilt, don't they? They do a
Jamie Lee Curtis when when they're doing that audio commentary, she's like, "Look at the way he's doing this. Look at that. Wow, like how cool!"
Right. She's like gushing about it.
yeah, she is. Yeah.
Man, I really want to watch that or listen to that commentary.
properly good.
It's really cool to just have
Yeah.
them like actually
Yeah, that
enthusiastic about it. Yeah.
I'd have looked into that if I knew it existed. I may still do.
Even on the Blu-ray, they have they have like Top of the Pops 2 bits where, you know, in Top of the Pops when you watch an act and he says this, that, and then it pops up in the corner with little facts about the band or artist saying they.
What, does it
made
do
this
that
and
on the
this.
Blu-ray?
There is a Blu-ray option
There's little
to
like buits.
to turn that
Oh,
on
cool.
during the film, and it will tell you bits, little fun facts, I think they call it fast facts on the Blu-rays. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Sounds
really
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
This
Sounds
is-
like the best
Yeah.
audio commentary
Yeah.
I've ever heard of.
Well, this is like the thing about Blu-rays and stuff, which you still don't get on streaming, which is underrated, is that all these bonus features that they include are still really cool to have. And they give you the option to look at documentaries, and they've got the original trailers on there. They've even got the original radio adverts and commercials, which are cool as well, you know.
Yeah, I'm quite a fan of that like general paraphernalia you get with them that's kind of being lost. Like sometimes you get it. When Prey came out recently, they did like that alternate in the Navajo language cut in the special features, and you had to like kind of find it
on
Disney
streaming.
Plus.
Yeah.
And I wish they did more of that kind of thing. I wish there was a commentary track that you could put on with anything on streaming services.
It's just not that. They don't have to anymore, do they? Because on streaming, it's just one in a big old. It's like a drop in the ocean.
No, yeah.
Oh,
It's
but
just content. Just,
and they
just watch
don't
something.
need-
Watch something else.
And they don't need to. You're not specifically buying one thing. You just got money for.
But at
one
the same
thing, you know.
time, it's very valuable for them to have things that people rewatch, like having The Office or Friends on a streaming service or The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Streaming services are really going to value that, and people are going to watch a movie twice if they're a big fan of it and want to know how it's made. I've had a lot of people say that they wish that the commentary was on blah that they really like and watch all the time. So
To be fair, it is surprising because they obviously offer like different audio options anyway. So you know, how hard can it be to? I mean, obviously,
And I'm sure
presumably you can't get director's commentary in multiple languages, but just have an additional audio track.
yeah, and I'm
How
sure
hard
if you
could
have
that be?
like the rights to show the movie on your streaming service,
Surely
I can't
you-
imagine that you
surely
don't
you-
have the rights
yeah.
to have the audio
Oh,
commentary.
interesting. Is it like a separate thing, like the rights to like special
Maybe the
features?
DVD distributor has those, but I don't know whether different DVDs or Blu-ray releases have different commentary for that reason. But don't know.
What I also love about the making of this film is that John Carpenter sort of just got his friends involved, and a lot of it is all voluntary work. Like, not a lot of people got paid. There was a very core group of people, and then everything else is kind of people getting involved.
Yeah, it's similar to what we did or talked about with the Romero.
Yeah.
Night of the
Night of the
Living
Living
Dead,
Dead,
yeah.
right? Yeah. Which is another like thing about this being an independent movie.
Yeah, I mean,
low budget.
it's the low budget, and it's what
Get
they
your friends
did.
in.
And how they can stretch that out as much as they can. Like, their friend owned that truck, which the dead guy where Loomis finds at the phone booth. That, and even in that scene, the train that comes across with Loomis when he walks towards it, that wasn't planned. None of this is planned. That just
No,
Deborah Hill was like, "Oh, we didn't even plan this. It just adds to the cinematography
Yeah, yeah.
element."
Yeah,
I mean,
I was quite
we got really lucky.
Yeah, I didn't know that was unplanned. That's a great like little bit of ambient kind of
Yeah.
noise that comes in.
And they just
Yeah.
got lucky with things like that. And I just love the idea of this film being so strung together, like shoestring budget. And they would all, Jamie Lee Curtis says in that documentary that on lunch times they'd all just kind of lie down and have a nap and like all together. And
Yeah.
it was,
That's what I love about 70s and 60s horror cinema in general. A lot of them were not given huge budgets.
It's like this
Even 50s as well.
underdog thing. Like everyone's working
They're kind
together.
of fighting
you know?
against it, but it's a team effort.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like an almost socialist thing where you a lot of them are volunteering, doing it unpaid just because they want to be part of
Yeah.
it, just because they want to be part of the.
and they were saying, Jamie Lee Curtis saying that Carpenter and Hill are the oldest people on the set, and they're not old, they're like 30, and everyone else is really young, just willing to get in there and do it. And this whole thing, it adds to the beauty of this film for me, and the fact that basically everyone involved went on to do great things afterwards. You know, and it spawned so many careers and so many sequels, and there's just so much professional work and money for people that came out of this film, and it comes out of love as well. This is a passion project in many respects, and Carpenter says that it's his favorite film that he's ever been involved with.
Yeah, I was thinking of asking you that earlier on when you were talking about his views on the film. I didn't know it was his
Yeah,
favorite.
he loves it. Like the idea that because it was just this little bubble, like 3 weeks of their lives, where they filmed it, wrote it, did everything, and it's just this perfect utopian little bubble for just that. Just that.
I mean,
small.
It's
amount
probably
of time.
it's exactly the kind of moment that you get into filmmaking to experience, I guess, right? I bet you spent the rest of his career like trying to chase that high and never like quite reached it again.
And it's another one of those things. You find it with songs, certain songs that become really big and famous and a staple of those bands or artists. They're written really quickly.
Yeah,
they go off
kind
and
of
do
like
it.
jammed it together in the studio and that kind of thing on limited studio time because of the lower budget and kind of stuff. Yeah, I firmly believe that creative invention happens best.
It requires
under those
almost.
constraints. Yeah.
And Carpenter, speaking of that, Carpenter had 3 days to put the soundtrack together.
Yeah, and
So
it's one of the most
yeah.
recognisable soundtracks in all of cinema, let alone horror cinema.
And it comes from bongos. His dad gave him bongos, and it's the rhythmic beat of that.
Yeah, his dad taught him the 5/4.
That's it.
5/4 time signature.
Yeah,
and that's what he uses because it's essentially familiar but feels a bit off, right? That's how I understand. 5/4. Yeah.
And he laid things over it, like the keyboards and the synths, and then when that producer watched it and said it wasn't scary, he really added in like the sort of like little bits. What's the meow?
Like the stings.
The stings,
The meows,
yeah.
But and his like his influences are clear, right? Like The Exorcist, obviously Tubular Bells, and especially Goblin, I think.
Yeah,
like Suspiria, I think
that's
was
why.
named. Yeah,
that's one of the many reasons why I would say it's not his best soundtrack. Purely because it's definitely very Tubular Bells. It's very The Exorcist. And sometimes in my mind, when I try and think of the Halloween theme, The Exorcist will play instead, purely because of the similarity. And it's definitely the whole movie in general is influenced by Giallo, but the soundtrack especially has
very Goblin.
Yeah, especially when it's not playing that Halloween melody, but when it's being a bit more
like ambient,
and going for the tension.
But then they are the first to say throughout this movie, in the commentary, they do say, we didn't make these things. We just put them all together in one digestible, quite simple film
package.
Yeah, and they're the ones who did that. So all the elements were there, already written, and they just kind of put this film together, which just perfectly like
encapsulates all those elements.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a stronger movie than any of the Giallo movies I've seen, I would say, possibly excluding Deep Red.
Yeah, I think Deep Red's better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But other than that, yeah, it's a king of all those Giallos. And I'd say it's better than The Exorcist as well. So
yeah, me too.
Even though I'm saying some of those elements are borrowed or a little too similar to, it's a better movie than those ones it borrowed from. So can hardly.
I wouldn't even say it was too similar to Tubular Bells. Really, it like the influence is very clear. But it feels to me distinct enough. Like I wouldn't necessarily call it a negative, just that he was wearing his influence on his sleeve with that one. I preferred his previous score in Assault on Precinct 13 as well. That main theme is just one of his best.
Yeah, I think that's literally his best. I think the score of that movie is so phenomenal that he never achieved it again, personally. But yeah, this is still one of his strongest ones.
Yeah, for sure.
And the budget constrained them with things like costumes and stuff. So
they owned all their clothes, didn't they?
They bought them from J.C. Penney's.
Yeah.
So what Laurie is wearing in some of the scenes at the opening, they're all like J.C. Penney sort of clothes.
She bought her entire wardrobe for less than $100, apparently.
They're of the time,
Yeah.
and it puts it in that moment in history, and so it's aged quite well.
They're very good, or they were very good at choosing the right clothes for the characters,
Yeah.
even on such a low budget, because the way Laurie is dressed compared to her friends is very important. It like visually backs up the whole thing about like how many books have you got, Laurie, and this kind of stuff. Yeah.
I always
Perfectly
forget,
done.
Mike.
Yeah. I forget my math book. I forget my English book, my French book. I love that bit as well. Well, she's just watching Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Linda's just absolutely rambling. And
Totally.
Yeah, totally rambling. Yeah.
And then you got the mask, the pure the fact that they just went with that mask of all masks.
Yeah.
And then they could never recapture it in any of the other films.
Yeah.
Because they used the original one again in the second one, but it's all scrumpled up. It'd been taken home.
Yeah, they tried to alter the look multiple times throughout the series, but it's never
been right.
The first one. Yeah.
It's never been quite right. Especially H2O is the worst one. Have you seen the mask in H2O?
I don't know, I think like one of the Thorns is worse.
It's not as bad as.
Like
well, I mean,
five or
including
six,
the Rob Zombie ones.
Oh yeah. Well, it's hardly there in the second one.
Yeah.
To be fair, like I think that the masks are one of the things that the new trilogy gets right. I think that they're probably the strongest masks since the original.
Yeah, possibly.
I especially love the Halloween Kills one. Is that what you got up there, Mike?
It was a birthday present or a Christmas present, so I don't know exactly where it's from, but I'd have to look it on. I think it was eBay or Amazon. Yeah, but it looks like a later one.
Evil dies tonight. Evil dies tonight.
It's a good one.
I wish the franchise had died, before.
No.
Mustafa
Anyway.
Ricard would not be happy.
Like
with
if that
saying
2018 one had come out as a standalone without the sequels, I'd be hailing its praises to this day. But those two
Yeah.
sequels are bad.
But then we wouldn't have had grown up Laurie. Not grown up Laurie, grown up Lindsay.
Yeah,
Like played by the same actress.
I guess. Does make it a good.
And she
movie,
was good
though.
at she was like the best in that.
Yeah, she was really good. You know that she's like a reality TV star. Yeah, from I can't remember. I think it's Desperate Housewives or something like that. But yeah, she's a reality TV star.
Oh, cool.
Oh, right, it's
Yeah.
like a regular.
Yeah, like
Member
whatever.
of
Yeah,
the
I never seen it, but like she's like one of the
cast.
main ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had the production designer Tommy Lee Wallace, who had several mask choices for Michael Myers. Do you know which ones they are? Which sort of ones they were looking at the time?
Well, I read there was a clown one
Yeah, there's a clown one
with
There's-
red hair.
That's it.
Which sounds insane.
A bit too much. I mean,
Very-
they already
very
had.
Gacy.
They
Gacy-
already.
was Gacy before 78.
Ooh, I think it was early 70s.
The
Gacy.
Halloween Rob Zombie
But he wasn't a
remake.
mask anyway.
The Rob Zombie remake of Halloween leans a bit more into that clown mask because he wears it a few times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, as a child, he wears the mask.
Yeah.
Several times. Yeah,
The-
because he has a clown mask as a child in the original, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
It's a happy clown mask.
Yeah.
But they wanted him to wear a sad clown mask. But that was one of the ideas. The other one was Richard Nixon.
Oh, really?
That
Cool.
was one of them. And Mr. Spock.
Yeah.
So they must have
I mean-
gone to the...
There's
most
only a
random shot.
Star Trek theme, definitely. With
Yeah.
For all we
what
know,
they-
they could have all worked. Like the strength of the
Yeah.
movie could have catapulted any of those as like a distinctive.
I mean,
Yeah,
they do say
honestly.
they do say in the documentary that it doesn't actually look anything like what's his name? The
Shatner.
mask. Yeah, it doesn't look anything like William Shatner.
Even
They
before they cut out the eyelids, took off the eyebrows and spray
That's
painted it
it.
white.
Yeah,
It's,
it was
I
definitely
saw
a
it.
cheap
It looks
mask.
terrible.
Like,
yeah,
yeah.
but that works, right? That
I
just
kind
adds
of want to
it.
see the alternate dimension Nixon one. There, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. What would he say? I want to see him just do a Nixon impression.
I am not a crook. That kind of thing. Agnew. Yeah.
So so the film came out, and then initially tepid, very tepid when it first came out, reviews wise.
Or was it a similar story to Night of the Living Dead? Was it? It
Well,
didn't get-
there
didn't
weren't very
get
good
fully
reviews. It didn't get very good reviews.
appreciated
No,
for a
at
little
first.
while.
No, I think it took off much more quickly in Night of the Living Dead.
Right. Okay.
Like within a few days, I think. Like it was getting good word.
It
of
was
mouth.
word of mouth. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was.
Did it get wide release straight
No,
away?
no.
No.
They screened it to a bunch of. You can interrupt me
No,
if
go
I
for
say
it.
anything wrong,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
screened it to a bunch of like movie studios, and a lot of people didn't turn up. So they were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna do it ourselves." So they apparently called in a friend, and they managed to get 400 copies printed from MGM.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
it?
right. Yeah. Because he owed him a favor or something.
Yeah, there was. I can't remember. Was it a CAD? Like it was one of
Something
the
like
one of
that,
the
yeah.
producers like had a connection. Yeah, or someone like that. And they so they basically had to like take it city by city and like sell it basically to each cinema, right? And
Do you know about the student thing?
oh yeah,
That's great.
So they screened it at Carpenter's old uni,
Yeah.
University of Southern California, USC. and like a bunch of like film students turned up to watch it, and they were like, "Why the hell did you make a film like this?" They got grilled. They got destroyed by these students. Yeah,
like apparently 33% of them walked out.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Jeez.
But then one of the producers was like, "Well, 33% of people aren't going to like horror films, so that's okay."
Yeah.
And then the critical impressions. I've got a few of them on here. This is from Variety. After a promising opening, Halloween becomes just another maniac on the loose suspenser. However, despite the prosaic plot, director John Carpenter has timed the film's gore so that the 93-minute item is packed with enough thrills. Although there is no gore, so the person...
Quote unquote gore.
Yeah.
A line of blood.
Another one from The New Yorker, Pauline Kael. Halloween has a pitiful, amateurish script, yet a lot of people seem convinced that it is something special, a classic. So like age like milk.
I mean,
Well, it's ironic that comments age like milk.
Yeah.
there may still be some people that.
So
don't like
I
Halloween
bet
so
aged
much.
at milk is what I mean by that comment. Sorry, no,
I thought you were saying that's what the review was.
No.
But yeah, apparently they were like, when they were screening it, they were like phoning up, like getting like receipt numbers every day, and it was like doubling. And they're like, wow,
Yeah,
we got a hit on
Because it started off okay and then just built up, didn't
like
it?
a runaway success after a certain point. Yeah.
And look at the LA Times, a well-made but empty and morbid thriller. It's just
bullshit. Like,
and Carpenter's quite funny because he says he didn't even know it was going to be. He like got told it was making money, and he was like, "Is it? I didn't know." And he also says that it was the comparison by someone to Psycho and those Hitchcock films that everyone who were reviewing it all of a sudden went, "Oh, it's really good. Oh, it's fantastic. What a film." So it took a well-established reviewer to say that. And then everyone else just sort of jumped on board and started seeing it from a certain point of view.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because one of Hitchcock's latter films, Frenzy from 1975, is an absolute masterpiece. And that's really brutal and really kind of messed up more so than Halloween 3 years before. So it's more like Hitchcock than you would expect.
yeah, especially
So
like
it's understandable
contemporary
that they'd
Hitchcock
make-
at that time.
Yeah, exactly. It's understandable that you'd make those comparisons, and I think it stands up definitely. I think Frenzy is a masterpiece as well, but yeah.
Do you think there's
I
like
don't know what they were
do you think
thinking,
there's like a
basically.
thing though where if like Hitchcock's name was on Halloween, then they wouldn't have gone through
Yeah,
this
if it's an
rigmarole?
established name.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the man had already made Assault on Precinct 13, which is also a masterpiece. So
Yeah, but it's not like Hitchcock levels of. I mean, that was an independent movie also, wasn't it?
yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm not going to say it has the artfulness of some of Hitchcock's.
No, I mean
films,
even like the
but it's still
as
extremely
being
good.
like anywhere close to like as well known as Hitchcock. Like,
Yeah, correct.
but you know,
But if they're a film critic, why they should have seen his previous work. I would expect that from a critic.
you would hope so, but who knows? Yeah.
Who knows?
Maybe I'm asking too much. Of
They're
them.
probably up their own arses a lot of the time, film critics.
Yeah, at least they'd have justification for being up their own asses if they'd seen the
I mean,
previous movies.
if you're a professional critic, not every single one of them is fucking Mark Commode, who actually who is able to go back in his list of films and recall them quite vividly when it comes to things like horror.
Yeah.
He's quite good with that. Not all of them are going to see horror in such artistic ways, especially in this time period.
Yeah, correct.
And,
Well, that still happens today. There's a lot
yeah.
of people that just dismiss the entire genre. So I guess if you were getting a lot of people that were looking for thrillers and complex writing and a mystery element, possibly, if they were looking Hitchcockian, they might have been disappointed. Yeah.
But this film was on the budget. I think they ended up spending $320,000, and the profits. It was the most successful independent film of all time at that moment in time.
And how long did that last for? That record, I got a bit confused.
I'm not sure. I think by the time the 90s rolled around, it had been kicked off the perch.
Oh yeah, I mean surely like Blair Witch Project and would have.
Yeah, I wonder
it, but-
so there must have been something that superseded it in the meantime, but I'm not sure what that would have been.
But it's quite amazing that it did that. And
Yeah.
what John Carpenter says is Halloween was a movie put together by kids, a moment in time, and there hasn't been that many since that. It was basically this one moment in time, and he's quite sad that there are so many sequels because he could never recapture that original film. And there is no recapturing that.
No, it's
you know,
true.
it is a standalone film, and then the rest of them they're just not as good, are they?
Well, no, they're products before.
Yeah, they never got the originality of it.
Yeah, they're from good to terrible, but they're nowhere near even comparison with the first one.
It's like they're commercial products, right? Before they're creative products.
Yeah.
Although on the other side, like John Carpenter, probably from a creative perspective, feels that way, but certainly from like a capitalist perspective, he's happy with all of them, right? Like,
I'd imagine
I love
made
it.
him a bunch of money.
I love it in like the documentary and the audio commentary. He's always going, "Yeah, the capitalist in me.
Yeah,
I
think I've seen that one too.
I always like, do you know the NBC stuff is really interesting? Do you know all about the NBC stuff? So NBC in 1981 bought the rights to show Halloween on their
TV.
network.
Yeah, I do know this. Yeah.
And they paid $4 million for it. Like, and considering the budget originally was $320,000, $4 million just for the rights to play it on your network. And John Carpenter was like, because they wanted to cut things out and create new scenes for it to fill the gap, because it was going to fill a 2-hour gap, but it fell about 3 minutes short. So they had to, during the filming of Halloween 2, they then filmed bonus scenes and cut out some of the more... Oh, they cut out the bit with Annie's bum hanging out the window where you see her panties and that. They cut all of that stuff out because they...
Because of TV censorship.
Because censorship.
Violence is fine.
Yeah.
But you can't see panties.
No.
I hope Linda's tits were still on.
Think of the children.
Yeah. And John Carpenter says, I sold out. Like, he just says it. I mean, I don't mind those. Have you seen the bonus clips? The extra?
No, I haven't.
They're quite interesting.
Were they not in Halloween 2? They're completely...
No, they were
bonus clips.
Completely bonus clips.
Just for the television
For the television version.
Halloween 1.
They were just filmed during Halloween 2.
Yeah.
Right.
And they spent more money on this, what ended up being 11 minutes, than they did for the entire budget.
Oh, that's quite
the
a
first
hefty addition then, 11 minutes. Yeah.
And
is there anything of note in those?
Scene with Loomis in court, trying, without a veil, trying to stop Michael being moved to a different institution.
Okay. Right at the start.
Yeah, right at the start.
After the kid scene. Yeah.
Because he has it's all circumstantial. He says, he's evil. He's going to do something. They're like, what evidence do you have?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I don't.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I think I need to seek that out.
It's interesting. It's on YouTube. There's another scene with Laurie and Annie at Annie's house, and they're doing their hair and stuff for the night. So there's some interesting stuff.
A bit more like character building.
Yeah, definitely.
Surprised that, as far as I know, there's no like extended cut with everything put in.
Yeah.
Like released on like physical media somewhere.
Yeah, including the stuff that NBC took out.
Everything. Yeah. Shove it all in. Yeah.
But I guess that's not within the original artistic vision. If you were going to do that, it wouldn't be a director's cut, because I can't imagine John Carpenter in his utopian artistic vision would want that in there.
No,
because he would leave it alone. He's the opposite of George Lucas, isn't he?
Yeah.
But at the same time, when Carpenter does die, someone might feel like there's some money to be made off of that, and
I'd probably pay for it, to be honest with you.
Well, it's a bit like how...
And if they stitched Halloween 2 onto the end as well...
Just make it one epic 4-hour movie.
Yeah, it's almost like a little mini-series.
It would pull the first movie down so much, those do that.
I like Halloween 2, it's okay.
It's fine.
But I think it would be interesting. It's a bit like what they did with The Godfather, right?
I was literally about to say that.
When they turned it into like a bit of a TV show. Yeah, or like with Das Boot, they did the same thing. They made a like long form kind of mini series out of the multiple cuts and like huge amount of film they had.
I would love to see that version of The Godfather where it's all linear and you see all of Robert De Niro stuff. Yeah, because that's what they did, and then they go back and they go into
that would be cool, actually.
The modern day.
Yeah,
it would be interesting, but I think it would be weaker because though I think Godfather 2 is one of the best films of all time. There's a reason those are in the order that they are. Well, this isn't a Godfather podcast.
It is now.
But thematically,
maybe we should bring The Descent back.
Yeah.
What did you?
It's like what you said about artistic vision, right? I'm more interested in what the director was trying to say than a complete version of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless I hated it in the first hand, then I don't care what the director had to say, and I'd watch it a better version if it so-called exists.
Yeah, but I wonder if, before he like retires or dies, if he would look at it one more time and do a final cut with everything.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Do a Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a George Lucas, if we get the other.
Well,
Yeah.
We'll get some like CGI aliens in the back of Haddonfield. And
Just CGI. It was a complete monster, like from The Thing, kind of.
Michael Myers is holding a walkie-talkie instead of a knife.
You got anything more there, Dave? Or what's the next bit you want to talk about?
That's more or less it. We mentioned about Akkad's relationship to the film changing once it started printing money. But apparently there's a quote by Pleasance, because he kept coming back for a lot of the sequels, saying, "Are you going to keep making hundreds of these?" And he cryptically said, "No, I'm going to make 22 of them." But
I wish he had.
keep him
going.
Yeah.
I mean, once it reached kind of a low point, I'd still have watched them, and I'd still got some kind of enjoyment out of them.
It's a shame, in a way, that the Loomis character has been lost to time now, because no one can ever do what Donald Pleasance did with that character. They tried in the Rob Zombie Halloweens.
I actually thought that that was one of the stronger parts of it.
I thought you were about to say it one-upped.
No.
You better not.
Absolutely not. But like Malcolm McDowell, and that was one of the best parts.
Yeah, it's
of that
good.
film.
Yeah, I love McDowell in everything he does, even all the terrible movies he does. But
the Loomis character is kind of lost now in these new Halloweens because he's dead within both in real life, and they couldn't really bring the character back. They can't do much with it, but it's always an interesting.
They will though. There'll be another.
Will. I know.
Be another remake.
But when Pleasance isn't in it, they always have to bring back Jamie Lee. So it's either one or the other, because they're
the origins.
Yeah,
the callbacks. Yeah.
It's always the way.
It's
with
quite
Halloween.
interesting though, being as though Christopher Lee hated playing Dracula for like 12 movies. How Donald Pleasance loved it.
Yeah. Well, Christopher Lee said to Deborah Hill once that it's the biggest regret of his career wasn't taking on that role, because it would have given him something
it would have
new.
cemented him in pop culture way before. I mean, he already had a bit of a leg in with Dracula, but way before Lord of the Rings, certainly. If he was in Halloween, that would have dwarfed any Dracula.
Yeah, I mean, because he had a kind of a lull, right? Like, I mean, he was still doing Hammer around that time, was he? Or
78, he'd kind of. I think Hammer was kind of out of there. They weren't doing much after like the mid 70s. Not of any note, and I don't think they had Christopher Lee in them. I think when we watched the documentary, this was when he was doing his weird.
Was he in Australia at this
European?
The European ones.
Yeah, maybe he was doing the Return of Captain Fantastic around that time.
So, Dave, I know you're really desperate to talk about the themes of this film, so I'm really interested to hear what you got to say.
Well, yeah. Firstly, I wanted to come back to the theme of fate that we mentioned a bit earlier. I know that Mike want to talk about it as well.
As Joe's.
Look like you're turning it into Nosferatu.
Yeah. It's a powerful theme. I'm not sure I fully agree with it, but I can totally
Totally
see where it's coming from.
Too much Haribo.
Got a sugar rush.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you find it more compelling that basically Laurie and Michael cross paths purely by cosmic chance, that they were essentially fated to meet, but purely by coincidence and chance, or that there is some familial connection or some other kind of more understandable and explainable reason?
The former, definitely the former.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't have to be that, right? It doesn't have to be either of those. It can just be complete coincidence, and she just happens to be so aware of her surroundings. She picks up on him and is more of a difficulty for him to kill.
So how is that?
It doesn't have to be fate, because you're talking about almost a metaphorical kind of supernatural thing when you say fate, right?
No, not exactly. And I'm explicitly not saying supernatural. Really, just that it was going to happen, but not because it was kind of cosmically controlled in any way, but just that it was always going to happen, but purely by coincidence and chance. So it's not like there's some supernatural thing pulling the strings, There's no familial connection. There's nothing controlling them to meet, but just that they were fated to meet purely by random chance.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like the randomness of it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of Laurie just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, because sometimes that's just what happens. Look at stabbings that happen in London in Leicester Square. Like, they've got nothing to do with the person who stabbed them. They're just there at the wrong time. And this sort of stuff happens in real life. And in a way, it's scarier because you literally have zero control over that.
Yeah, I think
nothing
because
of
of my
control.
my worldview and also what I like in horror, I think I prefer the interpretation of it just being random chance and not fated. But at the same time, both are completely valid interpretations and completely valid things to think.
Well, I like what Halloween 2 did and made the sibling connection a thing. But I also like what Halloween 2018 did, where they go, oh, aren't they brother and sister or something? And they go, no, that was all
some crazy story
Yeah.
or something. Yeah.
I'm happy to be along for the ride, basically, with a lot of these kind of like lore introductions and subtractions with the franchise.
'Cause then
to
you-
an extent, but
Then you've got the idea. I mean, the initial sequels are powered by the fact that Laurie Strode then has a daughter who then Jamie is in it, and then Jamie becomes the main subject of the films during the Thorn trilogy, or at least 2 of the 3, because then they really do a dirty in the third one.
Yeah, don't we get Paul Rudd in the last
Yeah,
one?
yeah.
yeah. But at the same time, it's a bit cheap, isn't it? It's a bit of a cheap shoehorn to continue the franchise when there's no other way of continuing the franchise except rebooting it.
And I guess it's a bit cheaper in general anyway, because the reason John Carpenter took on the second Halloween is partly due to the fact that they didn't get all the money they were owed. And they were going to make Halloween 2 was going to be made with or without them basically anyway. So he was like, well, we should just do it. And then he realised when he sat down to write it that, oh, this is already a full story.
Yeah.
There's nothing
Yeah.
else to add.
Well, a sequel is essentially antithetical to the whole core idea of Michael Myers, because you can't do a sequel without giving more story and explaining him, right? Like, in some way, you can't do the same thing again.
You can't hold the mystery for another feature length.
Yeah, exactly.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just do the same thing again where he's the same thing with like a new cast of characters. And
Yeah.
so
and any explanation would have been insufficient.
yeah.
So
So another thing, and so what you're saying about the kind of like fear of stabbing. So one of the main things that I really like about this film and what does set it apart for me compared to what came before is the setting of being in suburbia.
yeah.
And I actually think that's a very strong part of the film, because it's much scarier, right, that this violence is happening in suburbia. So you know, I think like Texas
It's out of place compared to Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah,
and,
where Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's like
Hills
rural,
Have Eyes
middle of nowhere,
and-
yeah, you know, or some.
This is just a nice little
abandoned
town.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And-
it's transporting the fear of being somewhere scary
to your
To-
home. Yeah,
the somewhere scary can be where you're at right
yeah,
now.
which is
Yeah.
really scary. A really scary concept. Is why I find the concept of home invasion so scary. I mean, it's kind of an extension of that.
Yeah, exactly.
and I
wouldn't
do-
be surprised if Straw Dogs could get a little bit of accreditation to.
Yeah, even that is like a kind of like isolated cabin, right? From what I remember correctly, I haven't seen it for a while.
I think they're on holiday, I guess.
Yeah, and they go
But
to, like,
at the
some
same
small
time, it is a
town.
place where they feel safe.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
on the road in Texas Chainsaw Massacre or in the middle of nowhere, broken down like Hills of Eyes.
And with it being somewhere like Haddonfield or whatever that is, it's just a small town. It's just a place where something bad has happened once upon a time, and there's a folk tale about that event, or the rumor spreads, Chinese whispers, and it becomes blown up, or there is something there. Like take Worcester in England, like our hometown, Dave, where there was the murders at Rainbow Hill. You know about this one? You know, like this actually genuinely happened.
No, when did this happen?
This happened, I think, back in the 70s, and it's just something that has passed through down the line. And
Is it
it's
like an
exactly
unsolved murder?
No, God, no. Basically, there was a lodger at a house, and there was a babysitter, and it was the guy lodging. He ended up killing the children and then putting them outside on like the railings on the front garden
Right,
one night
yeah,
when they
Cool.
went out for
Like-
dinner.
like an actual horror movie.
Yeah. But anyway, did you say cool?
that's dubious wording is what that is. Watch out for this guy in the news.
Because there's a genuine thing that happened in Worcester.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned that, because that's something that we haven't actually discussed all about this film, and it's actually one of the kind of components of the conception of the idea. And again, we didn't mention it at all, which is the idea of the haunted house.
Yeah.
Like Carpenter, when he was presented with the initial idea of the babysitter murders, he had this idea to have it set on a holiday, but he also had this kind of idea that small towns always have like some kind of like local legend, folklore, about the haunted house at the end of the street.
Yeah.
And of course that is the Myers house in this, where the violence happens in the past.
Evil
and then,
returns.
Yeah. And
which is a quite powerful motif.
It is, and
also brings it home again, because
yes, it's
like
again,
Joe says,
it's about
most of the places
it's
in the world
it's
have
about
that story.
that suburban connection, because it's not just Haddonfield, Illinois. It's not Haddonfield, New Jersey. It's every small town.
Yeah.
And this is something now in here as well. So that guy, they call him the Monster of Worcester. That's his name.
Is
the
this
Monster
a real
of Worcester.
thing?
This is a real thing.
Wow.
Notorious Monster of Worcester, who killed 3 children he was babysitting, then impaled their bodies on spiked garden railings. He's being prepared for release. So this was back in 2016. And David McGreevy murdered 3 siblings while babysitting in April 1973. The then 21-year-old jailed for life with a minimum term of 20 years, spent 2 years in open prison but returned when public found out. McGreevy, now 65, is reportedly being prepared for release from prison.
My God, this is literally the plot of Halloween 2018.
Yeah.
Because Michael Myers is 21 in Halloween, the first one, when he kills them. He killed babysitters, or did he kill kids?
No, he killed the kids. He was the babysitter.
Oh, he was the babysitter.
He killed, was sentenced to life for killing Paul Ralph, 4, and his 2 sisters. Yeah.
God.
That's it, man.
A 2-year-old and a 9-month-old killed in their Worcester home.
I was not expecting 4 to be the oldest. That's,
Their mother told the son she begged that McGreevy, who is now in his late 60s, to stay locked up. It's crazy. It's like genuine. It's one of Worcester's worst stories. True crime stories. Yeah, it's terrible. And it's something that I was told. So I was told about this, like the boogeyman scenario in a way, when I was young.
Is the house still there?
I reckon it probably is. I don't know, where is it? Gillam Street. Hold on.
It's also a bit.
Could you Google map
that?
Gillam Street. Well? What's that? Sorry.
It's also a bit Amityville as well, isn't it? Which is also a 70s horror.
Yeah, well, that's that came out after Halloween,
Returns.
right? So that like expanded on the haunted
what year
house.
Was that? That must have been really.
It was just after Halloween, I think.
Yeah, really close.
Yeah, Gillam Street. How do you spell that? Okay, Gillam Street. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, where is that in Worcester?
Yeah, Rainbow Hill. It's there right by the cemetery.
That's right where I live.
Yeah.
So where he did that is kind of close to where I live. So it is, and I remember my dad's friend, like family friend, telling that story. He was like the first one to tell me when I was quite young, and he was like, "Really, this is real?" Like it didn't seem real, and it is kind of like them telling a boogeyman story, and so you can connect on that at a very sort of real level, like something that is there. And I think that's the genius of this film, is that you are able to connect part of your life with it.
I think so. It's I said,
even though
it's not just
vaguely supernatural and vaguely, personified in a non-human manner. It's still
what he represents.
It's still kind of
is
exactly.
evil in suburbia, and I think
he's a faceless version of a real
evil
evil that inhabits every single
and
place in the world.
That works.
I mean, it shocks and fragments a little town and communities, like that house in Haddonfield. No one's lived there for over 20 years, and why would you want to live there?
Yeah. Although that brings me to another one of my favourite bits of the movie, which I've forgotten to mention up till this point, where Loomis goes, "Get your ass away from here," to the kids
weird.
that
It's weird that he does that.
I absolutely love it though. It's one of
he's just trying to get them away because he thinks Michael might be in there.
Save them.
There are other ways of doing that.
But not less entertaining.
Yeah, but Loomis is weird.
Yeah.
Loomis is just an oddball in society.
He's a wild card. Yeah.
And it's the only time you see him actually have any sort of levity in the whole film.
Yeah.
It's the only time he smiles or is like feels pleased with himself. He's so in his own mind for the rest of the film.
So wound up.
Yeah,
Well, that's
so
the only
wound
thing
up.
he probably felt like he did good, other than the actual shooting at the end that you don't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And it's
He
also
still
quite
saved Laurie though.
Yeah, I guess.
it's quite realistic that he missed the car being parked right by him because he's so invested in this one, and it takes him forever for his focus to
Tunnel vision. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And you know what happens? You walk into a room and you think, oh, God, where is this? Where, you're looking for something,
But at the
you
same
can't
time,
find
the
it.
cop should have seen that car.
Potentially, but none of them take him
It's like
seriously.
a small town sheriff. Yeah, he's like humoring him basically, right?
He
I
has-
guess.
babysitting
But he's
him,
sacrificing his night, so he can't be
Yeah,
driving around
yeah, because
not
he's like an
looking at all.
insane old man
That's-
Yeah.
shouting at kids.
The best thing I
You
read
need to
about
keep an eye on
Loomis,
him.
the best thing I heard about Loomis in this film is he has the curse of foresight. He kind of knows what's going to happen every point in the film.
Well, he's the Cassandra, right? He
Yeah.
like cries, the catastrophe, but no one listens to him.
yeah.
Yeah.
There was one thing I wanted to talk about before we moved on, which is about the whole thing. I mean, we talk about within the context of this film and then slashers in general about killing like sexually advanced, active, sexually advanced.
They're not basic, they're advanced.
They know what they're
They've
doing.
done the course. Yeah.
Level 2.
They got their certificate. Yeah, the GCSE.
So the killing of sexually active teens, and like how this like Carpenter famously calls this a misreading of the film.
Yeah.
That Laurie doesn't live because she's a virgin, but apparently because she's sexually repressed and frustrated.
Yeah.
It's only because of the bleed in from Friday the 13th that becomes like a huge thing in slashers, I would argue.
Yeah, but like Friday the 13th,
But then-
presumably misread Halloween in order to do that.
Correct.
And then Scream kind of hammers it home by showing Halloween on that they're watching
Yeah.
that and uses it as
And-
the rules.
I don't really understand his point about her being like sexually repressed and like what that means.
Well, being that idea of her being sexually repressed is kind of like her focus. She's got much more focus. She's much more. She's kind of angry and pent up. It's like her friends throughout the film are telling her, "You need to go out with this person. You need to do this." Then they put when she's babysitting, they bring across Lindsay so she can have sex. Like
Yeah.
throughout the film,
Yeah,
it's like
okay, so-
because
yeah, but-
Laurie's not going to be doing anything with
like
boys.
that. Well, that was how I understood it as well. But that is not. That is literally saying that she is alive because she's a virgin. That's
Yeah.
saying.
No, but
that's
it
saying
means a
about
different
I
thing.
think Carpenter's arguing that it's incidental.
You could argue that when she starts thinking about Ben Tramer, when she's on the phones to her friends from across the
That's
the
when
road
she
and
misses
stuff.
the boogeyman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when she gets distracted by boys is when she gets in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, and like I know that it's not, it's about them being distracted, and he says that they're doing what teenagers normally do, and yeah, I definitely believe all of that. And I also like don't really like the like conservative reading that sexually promiscuous teenagers have to die.
I like it as a trope, but I don't like it.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
I guess it's kind of fun. Yeah,
thing.
I suppose,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't really agree with it. But like, it's kind of hard to not see it that way, in a way.
Well, was the guy in his truck who Michael Myers killed, was he like having sex at the time in the truck?
Who knows?
like-
Maybe.
It just so happened that, for me, my reading is it just so happened that he saw Laurie at that time where she dropped the keys off, and then the next thing is her friends show up, and then they start talking about boys like teenage girls do, and it just so happens that night they can get away with it because it's Halloween, and there's lots of moving parts going on. They're going to try and sneak their boyfriends in, so they're easy
it kind
prey.
of-
Yeah, it's all
in their
very
world.
normal, but like he essentially, I mean, more people die, but there are 3 death scenes in
Yeah.
the film, and in all 3 cases they're connected to sex. Like,
Yeah, because you're distracted.
yeah, but like you don't have to do all 3 about sex necessarily, right? Like you can just you can kill Linda and Bob.
But then
'cause they're
again,
having
Deborah
sex.
Hill wrote that part. She wrote all the parts of the teenage
Yeah,
girls.
right, and she said the same thing, and it's a question to her as well. Like the gender of the writer doesn't make a difference.
No, but I mean, she's the one who wrote the dialogue within it, like the idea of the teenage girls talking about boys. So that's her perspective.
Yeah, but couldn't, for example, Annie have been distracted a different way, and then it
Go
would
on
have
then.
been.
What else is she doing?
She could have been watching a horror film with Lindsay and then gets killed. Why
Drink
not?
drugs, has a nap.
Yeah.
Could have been any number of reasons.
I think
I was playing
think-
devil advocate, but I do subscribe to what you say. I think subconsciously, I guess he was writing that as part of it if he wasn't doing it on purpose. But the theme is so strong and so easy to take from the movie that it's difficult to think that even on it must have been on a subconscious level that he was thinking.
I mean, I definitely believe him that it wasn't intentional, and I do believe both of them that like they weren't criticizing teenagers for having sex.
Yeah, but they might have wanted to just distance themselves from maybe political groups that were using it in a certain way.
Yes,
yeah.
it would be.
But they've both maintained it's not to do with that on conscious level. They both maintained throughout. Deborah Hill for her whole life maintained that was not the intention of what she did.
As Mike said, it would be smart for her to maintain that position.
So do you think there's
but-
something in there about purity and virginity then with it? Why Laurie survives, or is it more in a way to do with the idea?
My preferred reading of the film is their intended reading, which is that they're just kids being kids, and it just so happens that the three kids that we see die on screen die because they were distracted, and they were all three distracted because of sex or reasons associated with sex. And I choose to read it that way, which happens to be the way they intended it. Yeah. But I really find it hard to disagree with someone else that would read it as
it's hard to prove or argue that it isn't the popular reading.
Yeah, because then a lot of other films, we do have the benefit of hindsight, and as we say, we've got Friday the 13th, we've got Scream, we've got every other sort of low budget slasher film that came out after this, which reinforced this narrative of the virgin surviving. And so I wonder if at the time there was a lot of that outside of the feminist look of the film, because there was this idea that of the conservative values in the film killing off impure people and in a conservative town, and it wasn't a feminist film at all, where in a way Jamie Lee Curtis is a badass. She does everything, saves the kids, fights off the killer
to get saved by a man. Is that what you're going to say?
No, I wasn't, because she saves herself really. Up until that point, she's not
she
to know.
She saves herself the first time, but the second time she presumably is, unless Michael Myers misses again, like he did. She is probably going to die. Yeah. But
no, that wasn't what I was going to. I was just saying how much of a badass I thought Laurie Strode was. There was no ending about a man saving Laurie Strode in that scenario, because that's a bullshit reading.
But it also could be. No,
that actually annoys me.
I think it's a valid reading.
It's a valid reading, but it annoys the fuck out of me that then all of a sudden a person who happens to be a man comes in and then does that. That doesn't take away from the fact that Laurie Strode is a badass woman who could be a feminist.
Correct.
Like, because she is the reason. If she died, say she dies at the end of that film there, she still saved 2 kids' lives. She has put herself in the firing line. She could have, in that moment, run off down the street and gotten away, but she chose to go back to the house to then shield the kids. And if that's not a badass person who just happens to be a woman in that scenario, and then Donald Pleasance comes in, shoots the fuck out of him, there's teamwork. Like there's, the reading sometimes, yes, you can read all this stuff into it, but it pisses me off sometimes.
I agree with you, but I think it's also very easy to simplify all of what you've just said to the bare bones plot. She is saved by Donald Pleasance, who is a man.
But to me, there's nothing wrong with that, is what I'm saying.
No, I mean, it definitely doesn't undervalue whole of her achievement so far, as you say, that, if she died in that moment, then she still will have saved those kids. But Donald Pleasance does come in and essentially commit the final act of the film, right? Like, which is to shoot Michael Myers out the window.
Yeah.
That does
and it's
happen.
arguable who would be, quote unquote, the hero of the movie based on all that happened. They'd have to share credit, or you'd have to choose one.
Well, could you imagine if
In
Donald
your
Pleasance
interpretation.
didn't do anything at the end of the film? About if you look at it like that, if he just doesn't find him, Laurie Strode does it all, and then it's like, what's the point in his character then?
Well,
he has to go on that journey.
Well, the thing is, and I was thinking about this earlier, that I would have preferred it if Laurie defeats Michael completely herself, and then that does raise the question as to Loomis.
What's the
But he
validity of
always-
that character?
No,
But the
because
fact is he
but for
always
me,
comes back
I would
though,
have
doesn't he?
had a much reduced role for Loomis. I would have had him in the opening, but only as an extension of Michael's character.
But he's already crazy, like reduced in that because they only had a week with, and without Donald Pleasance in that film, you could argue that the film wouldn't have had its success because he was a draw.
And it hurts the movie massively because I think Donald Pleasance is the best. Best
Yeah,
part of
and
the
if he
movie.
doesn't have the bit where you just said about the behind the bushes,
Yeah.
and then some of his lines when he's in the house, like he hammers home. He's the only one.
He's got most of the truly iconic lines in this movie.
And you remember in all
Yeah.
the sequels, he is chasing Michael. Michael doesn't give a crap about him. He just chases Michael around. And I think that's important to
Yeah,
him
but
as
that's
well.
the sequels, though.
Yeah, but he's important in this because he's still chasing Michael around. Michael doesn't really care about him. Like he's just really annoying. He's like a fly in the room, like annoying Michael Myers all the way through. But surely you can't have Halloween be the film it is without Loomis's role because it's so iconic.
Yeah, it's iconic because that's the film that we got.
But if he was in only the first bit,
I think it's quite important because it's almost the Dracula and
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing.
Yeah, I mean,
archetype,
he was
isn't it?
like he
Yeah.
named Van Helsing, didn't he? Pleasance, I think, is like one of the reasons he took the role.
Yeah, which is why it would have been
Yeah,
interesting.
but
to
I
be
also
played by
dislike the
Cushing.
character of Van Helsing in the Dracula book.
Yeah, as we've been through.
Yeah,
as we've
yeah,
been through.
um,
But I'm the opposite. I love the kind of good versus evil of the Dracula book.
I mean, it would have been
Aye.
cool to like, like have Laurie like saving Lonnie, warning Lonnie away. Yes, probably you're right that the film would have been more successful, but
but
moving away
where do you cut Donald Pleasance out?
But I would argue the movie that we have has the best of both worlds. Laurie is a strong, competent, great character, as is Loomis, and they share the screen.
yeah, like co-protagonists, and then
Yeah.
it's good, I guess, that Laurie kind of gets him once and then Loomis gets him once.
Yeah,
to kind
correct.
of complete both of their character arcs, I guess.
But where would you have said if you were doing it? Where would you have cut Donald Pleasance out of the film?
I don't know, maybe like have him not travel to Haddonfield.
But then what's the point in the character in the first place who's insane?
Well, because he is basically
there to build
he,
up the
yeah, he
mystique
fast
of,
forwards he fast forwards the character
Michael
of Michael
Myers,
Myers.
is what
Yeah,
I'm
but
yeah.
no other character within the film would have been able to be in that house and just say like he has the blackest eyes.
but they could have put that in anyway, like earlier.
Yeah, but he is the voice of like John Carpenter in many of these moments. Like within the film, John Carpenter gets his narrative across through Loomis. Like,
Yeah.
He's the driving force of what makes the character Michael Myers Michael Myers.
He's arguably very
So-
passive throughout the film up until the last fraction of it, which is very much like characters like Jay Quees in Shakespeare and As You Like It. He's just a completely passive character, and you could take that character out entirely within that script, right? And it wouldn't really affect a lot of what's happening, but you would then lose the all the world's a stage speech. You would lose some of the stuff that really fleshes it out. And with a Loomis character, he fleshes it out. He has these monologues. He has
It's
these
basically the color,
beautiful
isn't
moments.
It? It's
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah,
color
I mean,
commentary
like,
of the movie.
Even if he was only in the first acts of the film, you could cram in.
But would you
his
front
best-
load it? Why would you front load that? The weight of the film would just be like. "Doof."
Well, okay, then an alternative, and this actually might be better, would be to keep everything the same, and then have basically copy The Shining, copy the movie version of The Shining, and have Loomis step in at the end to save Laurie, and Michael kills him, and then Laurie gets Michael, or Laurie runs away, or something, and Loomis dies.
Could have worked.
Yeah.
I mean, we only have the version that it is now, but that would have been very iconic, and probably Stanley Kubrick wouldn't have done what he did in The Shining if Halloween had done it first.
Yeah.
I just think that the film, I don't think there was another way of doing it, because we now know Jamie Lee Curtis as an established Oscar-winning actress who is incredible in her own right. At this point in time, she's pretty much unknown, her first film role, and they wouldn't have built in that character because of parts of her as well, and the way they wanted a young actress in that role.
Mm-hmm.
They needed a well-established actor in the film to play a big role, to bring it success. Who knows if any of the parts that were in it suddenly got taken away, anything could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. These are all just hypotheticals.
Yeah, I mean, if I again use the example of Dracula, right? It's like if you took away everything from Dracula and made him a blank slate, like Michael Myers. You can't then take Van Helsing away, because that's taking out both sides. You need one side, at least. So if Michael Myers was a lot more of a character that built his own mystique, yes, you could.
Yeah, but I'm not suggesting. I'm
minimize.
not suggesting to remove Van Helsing completely. I'm just saying use Van Helsing to essentially establish the character of Dracula in lieu of Dracula doing it himself, but then transfer the actual like proactive part of the plot to the main characters of the story, i.e. Harker or probably his wife.
Yeah.
So you know,
it's a bit like what Nosferatu does.
yeah, exactly. It's why I like Nosferatu or Dracula. Or maybe have Donald Pleasance meet Jamie Lee Curtis earlier in the story and pass it on and then die. I actually kind of like the idea of everything being exactly the same and then him dying at the end, and Jamie Lee surviving by herself.
Do you just not like? Does it bother you?
What?
Does it bother you then that Donald Pleasance steps in and helps?
No, not really. I don't think it undercuts. I don't think it undercuts like the achievements of Jamie Lee characters at all. It just. It actually, I mean, this wasn't even my original point. I only mentioned this because I thought it was what you were going to say.
Oh no! And then you irked me. You really got me angry.
But you know, I do think, you know, that the thing about young people and sex, and then having, in addition to that, Donald Pleasance coming in and kind of saving the day. You know, like, I don't agree with that reading necessarily. And
It's a simplistic reading, but at the same time, you can't doubt that.
That is literally what happens.
Reading.
That's text.
Yeah.
Like, that is actually what happens.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason, you know, I mean, less so with like Donald Pleasance coming in at the end, but especially with the sex thing, like, it's part of the reason, I think, because it's such an easy reading.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, it's not the best, and it's certainly not the one I agree with, but it is like as valid as the others. I think so.
Yeah. Correct.
And yeah, anyway, it was really more about the sex I want to talk about. But the thing about Donald Pleasance, I've just decided I just wish he died at the end now, because I think that would have been better.
Yeah.
Because then there wouldn't be countless sequels where he becomes the face.
And we'd also be robbed of the perfect outro. But having not seen a filmed version of your outro, could be better, could be worse, could be the same. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, yeah, just on that, it's interesting because Jamie Lee Curtis, again, during that audio commentary, is like talking about she's amazed by what people can come up with such a simplistic plot. Mm-hmm. She's thinking all these themes that she goes like, the fact that people could come up with these huge overarching like stuff about conservative values in a small town. She's like, that's amazing. So like, I wish I could do that. Yeah, and people who see these things from nothing.
I heard one of the, like, I think it was a joke, but it's so funny, like a stretch. So you know how Jamie Lee Curtis forgets her chemistry book?
Yeah.
It's because she doesn't have chemistry with boys.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make connections anyway.
That's like a lampooning. That's something a parody would do.
Yeah.
If Scary Movie existed in 1979. Yeah.
John Carpenter also says, as I said, we're like mastering doing meaning without meaning. Like that was the idea.
You hear that all the time with these things, because I mean, they've been in the public eye for so long, and people, you know, make entire lives analysing things like this, and you know, through certain lenses, and you know, somebody with a different life experience can see things differently, right? And you can get different meaning out of things just by coming in from your own perspective, and it's all valid.
Yeah.
But most of the time, like, it's not intentional, right?
It's the basis of a lot of art critique, right?
Yeah,
like you basically interpret the piece as you see fit, and you can share that interpretation, but people may think it's completely wrong, but it's your interpretation. It means something to you. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. By the way, did you know the TV? Do you know about the TV and the what's showing?
Well, the thing.
Yeah, and that's
And Forbidden Planet as well.
Yeah. That is John Carpenter's TV, his personal TV.
Oh right.
Like part of the budget, the shoestring budget, is his TV with the what's the other one? Lindsay is watching. The
Forbidden Planet. Yeah.
Oh, is that the one she's? Yeah. So the one Lindsay's watching.
I think it would have been very interesting if. We'll come back to it.
I'll just say it's the one Lindsay is watching. It's a videotape and John Carpenter's TV. That's all.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think it would, because he remade The Thing, right? I would have loved John Carpenter to remake Forbidden Planet, because I love Forbidden Planet, and it's very 50s. But if it was given the full horror treatment, that would be an amazing movie. I would love that. So
yeah.
I wish I could see the alternate dimension where he didn't make The Thing, he made Forbidden Planet. Yeah.
And Donald Pleasance died at the end of Halloween.
No, I never.
Well, at least, just hopefully that would erase 4, 5, and 6. So.
No, I love the Thorn trilogy.
No, just get Jamie Lee back as the crazy professor character in those.
I think they should get Jamie Lee back in the role where she's writing an autobiography and novels and stuff, and then she. No one
Halloween Ends.
Yeah.
When she got over all of her trauma. And her daughter dying.
Yeah.
She's fine. She held on to the trauma of two of her friends dying for 50 years or whatever it is. She gets over her daughter dying.
One day.
She just got to let go. She release the hate.
She's like meditating or something. That's all it took.
So after everything, Dave, everything we talked about, do you still reckon Halloween is overrated?
Yes, I do. But again, I still like it. I still think it's good.
But
and I still
what's
enjoy
overrated about it?
It's just the Black Christmas thing for you, isn't it?
That is a big part of it.
You struggle with this with movies.
You
struggled with Joker with the idea that it wasn't wholly original.
I mean, to be fair, I would argue Joker's overrated.
Yeah,
because it's not as good as the thing it's riffing. Yeah.
No, I mean, I saw Halloween before I saw Black Christmas. Like that, I just don't connect with it in the way that I wish I did. And again, like reading like all of the behind the scenes stuff, fascinating. The conception, fascinating. Love John Carpenter. Love the idea of Michael Myers. Love the idea of evil in suburbia. But I just watch it, and I love the opening. I love the cinematography pretty much all the way through, especially in the daylight parts. But for some reason, and I don't know why, I just don't fully connect with it.
But is that overrated, or is that just...
Yes.
Overrated from his personal perspective.
I mean, overrated in the sense that people would regard it as one of the best horror movies.
I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, there's barely any slashers, if we're talking slasher subgenre, that I'd put above this. I know you put Scream, I wouldn't. Texas Chainsaw, if it qualifies.
Exists. I think it does exist.
It does exist. If it qualifies above it.
Yeah, it definitely qualifies.
Peeping Tom and Psycho, arguably above it.
Black Christmas,
arguably above it. And then that's it. What else is
maybe.
going to go above
it?
Maybe. So it's still...
Yeah, but people would put
6.
Halloween as number one almost every time. And that's what I'm saying. For me, it's not my number one. That's really what I'm saying. It may make the top 5. It might not.
Yeah. You put it on your overrated list when we did our intros.
Yeah, and I do consider it to be overrated.
I can slightly agree with that, because I'd put Peeping Tom, Psycho, Texas Chainsaw if it counts. Deep Red if it counts.
Well, Deep Red I would put above. I don't know if it counts as a slasher.
How could you ever...
But at the same time, people aren't putting those above it because those are lesser known movies.
But how could you ever overrate a film in which basically horror films wouldn't exist in the same way as they would today without that film? Because yes, Black Christmas
can't be doubted.
Black Christmas came before it, but it didn't hit off in the same way. Like, there's no... If it's better or worse... That to me doesn't matter. It's more so its influence was so humongous.
Well, tracing legacy is difficult. Yes, like the impact is undeniable. Like there were slashers before Halloween, but after Halloween,
Scream doesn't exist without Halloween.
Yeah, Well, I mean,
But at the same
who
time,
knows?
Dawn of the Dead doesn't exist without Night of the Living Dead, and I think Dawn of the Dead is better.
Yeah.
So
No, it's not about better or worse. It's just about the.
Well, I try to.
It's a word. Overrated for me is a very. It's a very loaded word for when it comes.
It is a loaded word, so I'm trying to like use it correctly, and I'm trying not to say that it's a bad film, and the influence of Halloween cannot be denied. Like I'm not going to fight facts. It's the most successful slasher. It's the one that popularized it. I think, some of it was misreading, like I say, especially the stuff about sex.
yeah,
I suppose my definition for overrated in this context is that I wish it was a different slasher from some of the ones that came before that were the ones that took off more than Halloween. That's just down to my taste.
I mean, if we were discussing Psycho, I'd probably have the exact same points as you and the exact same take as you for Peeping Tom.
Yeah.
But because of my personal preference, I prefer Halloween to Black Christmas. So I'm not quite on that side for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, but like that. It's taste.
Yeah.
It's just taste. I'm not saying it's bad. It's undeniably amazing. And I love John Carpenter, and like I say, I love the ideas and I love the concept of Michael Myers probably the most out of all of the slasher like big names. I certainly wouldn't say Halloween is my favorite slasher franchise.
Chucky. Child's
Yeah,
Play.
probably Child's Play. Yeah. Like I love a lot of the ideas. I love the concept, but it just doesn't quite resonate with me in the same way that some of the other ones do, and you know, in the way that it's clearly resonated with the entire world, I guess. And so for me, that's why I would call it overrated.
Watch it again
but not
now.
bad.
You know about the Worcester Killer.
Yeah, maybe that'll change everything. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you need to walk past the spooky Worcester house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it suddenly, once I walk past our own Myers house, suddenly it'll click.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. Not bad. Not a bad movie at all.
No.
Not
I think
bad is severely underrating it.
No, very
me.
good. Just I'm saying it's not a bad movie.
I know. I mean, I understand where you're coming from in the sense that you wish it had been something else or a different.
And yeah, it's not even that I
Film.
feel that Halloween doesn't deserve it, because it absolutely does deserve it. I just, you know, my taste doesn't quite align with like the general
Yeah.
taste in this instance.
The consensus.
Right? Yeah,
I mean,
the
because
consensus.
for me, like the idea of another film being in its place that was the one to take off just isn't a thing. Like it can't be. Like whatever happens, it just can't be.
Well, I feel like even if Black Christmas had its dues and it was the lauded one, I would still love Halloween. And if anything, I would still think Halloween is better. Because I think personally, the direction and the soundtrack are so strong, especially compared to Black Christmas, which I don't think has a particularly memorable
yeah, I don't
direction
particularly
style
remember
or
the
soundtrack.
score. I think it's well directed. I mean, the
I'm not saying it's badly directed,
The
certainly
cinematography
not,
in
but-
Halloween is amazing. Definitely.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's much stronger than Black Christmas.
I think like the yeah, I don't know if I'd even agree with that. I was saying that like I like the cinematography less in the darker scenes at the end. I find myself less saying wow like I do at the beginning, and I also don't think that Black Christmas has anything close to like the opening scene of Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a hipster. You know, honestly, maybe if Black Christmas was the popular one and Halloween then came out at the same time that it did, but just was, you know, relatively,
You'd be the
comparatively
man
obscure.
shouting about Halloween.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Honestly, maybe.
Yeah.
I just kind of love this film and the
Yeah, that's
series in
great.
general.
Yeah, that's great.
A lot of people, it annoys me when people sort of say, "Oh, the rest of the films," because how are they any worse than any of the other slasher franchises like Friday the 13th, which are dreadful, boring ones? The one thing you don't really get with a Halloween is a boring one. They go off the rails. They're batshit.
Mike's got something to say here.
Go on, which one's boring?
I mean, 4 to 6 are just not my jam.
No, 4 to 6 are fine.
6 isn't boring. It's just terrible.
Also, they do.
But 4 was okay, but I feel like 5 was a bit of a dry one. I don't
Five
know
was a
whether-
bit of a shame. There's a bit of a shame with that one in the sense that they teased that Jamie was going to become the killer, So that Jamie is the one who killed someone, ends up in a
Yeah,
psychotic
which I
ward.
wasn't very interested in that, and because of that,
Oh, that,
But a lot of people
isn't-
like that.
That's basically, I mean, because Friday the 13th did that too with Tommy Jarvis,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
So that's the other thing about Halloween is that, like, because of the gap between Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, like, Friday the 13th has come out between that and possibly Friday the 13th 2 as well.
yeah,
And, like, the increased violence in Halloween 2 is definitely, like, a response
yeah.
to Friday the
Yeah.
13th.
Well, the Friday the 13th came out like once a year.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
Well, there
a
was
lot of
also a
years.
dozen or probably way more than that films, slashers that came out in between
yeah,
all
that's-
of that.
That's true.
There was literally like hundreds of varying quality
Yeah.
slashers coming out of all kind of variety of twists and stuff, and it burned out quite quickly because 6 years later everything had kind of been done in terms of twists and
every single
possible
weapon, every
killers
single
and-
twist.
yeah,
But I mean,
every
from
single gimmick.
Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
Halloween as a franchise for me is like gives you so many treats along the way. It's like Halloween treats. It's like perfect sweets. You get the original and you get the start of Jamie Lee Curtis's career. You get the Michael Myers character, the definitive like slasher villain. You get John Carpenter and Deborah Hill who really springboard from this. And it has helped so many people become successful in their careers. Then you've got Halloween 2, which actually I would put down and pretty low on my list of favourite
I probably
Halloween
would as well,
films.
yeah.
Then you get the batshit crazy Halloween 3, which just
we
people
all, we all
hate.
love. We all love.
We all love. It's
Yeah.
completely
We
underrated.
want to talk about underrated. Yeah, that's Halloween 3. yeah.
Halloween 4, 5, and 6, the Thorn trilogy gets a lot of hate. And I can see why it gets a lot of hate. But it was also very successful because people just wanted Michael Myers back. People were
See,
just obsessed
That's
with
part of
that.
the reason I resent 4. I also resent 2 for that reason because I would have loved the anthology idea more. I know, I know it would
But
have.
then
amazing.
4
It wouldn't have
I
made
know
as
it.
much money,
I know it
would
would have been
a
commercially
marketing
successful.
disaster.
I know, you're right. I know,
But they
I know.
also helped again start another career with Jamie, right? With what's her name?
Danielle Harris.
Danielle Harris.
Yeah.
It started help another career. So Halloween has never taken away anything. It's always given something, and there's never been a curse to do with it.
Yeah, I heard people saying that there was never a curse with the first
You know,
one.
it's like the opposite to that. And then you've got 5 where he floats down the river and is just hilarious. And it's not meant to be, but it adds, there's still humour there. There's still
Yeah.
something within it. 6 goes completely off the rails, but in all of these, you get Donald Pleasance being the best Loomis. Whatever happens, Loomis is
Yeah.
still fantastic.
I think a lot of those Donald Pleasance was what I was sticking around for.
Yeah,
The rest of them I wasn't so invested.
And then you get the H2O, which is a great
One of the
one
good
as well.
It's a good one, yeah.
It's closer to the original in some ways, and Jamie Lee comes back, and it's cool, and it's good, and it's that 90s vibe.
It's very 90s,
yeah,
yeah.
it's my
Um,
third favourite.
Resurrection comes out and gets fucking kung fu on Michael Myers'
Yeah, I
ass.
still need to rewatch that.
I think Resurrection is my voice went high again. I'm just going through puberty.
The reverse
over
puberty.
here.
Yeah.
I think Resurrection is kind of underrated, honestly.
It is.
Yeah.
That opening
Yeah.
scene destroys it. That opening scene is shit.
Yeah.
If you can take that out of the film and just watch it when it starts with Busta Rhymes.
Honestly, if that was an option,
and
it would be
yeah.
a much better movie. Yeah.
And like the whole Big Brother thing. Like,
I
it's
like
just-
that.
it's
I think
just
that's
great.
cool. I love that, like, late 90s, early 2000s, like, gimmicky shit.
But it did end. That
Yeah.
film did destroy the original.
I love that as well. I feel like I should definitely rewatch.
I think
this
you're going to
movie and
like
come
it.
back
I think
and
you'll like it, yeah.
I feel like we should
sing its
watch that
praises.
all together.
As
next-
like a drunken
Yeah.
yellow experience.
Oh, that's a good idea. That sounds fun.
But then you get the Rob Zombie. It goes crazy. It goes a completely different way. Whatever you think of them, there's something.
Goes in the toilet.
They're definitely something. And then you get the new trilogy, which brings back, for Halloween fans, brings back Jamie Lee, brings back the original actress who played Lindsay.
Yeah.
and it-
2018 is solid. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, the other two are just, again, they're just so weird and wacky and different. It's Halloween for me has always been that. And because I don't really care about the quality of the later ones, I only really care about the quality of the first one. The later ones are just entertaining to me, and if it doesn't matter if
Yeah.
that's ironic or if that's because
See,
they're good.
I'm like the opposite. I have a certain like distaste for Halloween being ruined in multiple ways across the series.
I think you're probably
But-
there with John Carpenter. I think you're probably on par.
but at the same time, I really like the Friday the 13th franchise as a whole because I haven't got a lot of respect for the first one when it starts. It's fine, it's pretty good, but that's a lot more consistent. As in, they're consistently not terrible. They're not
Yeah.
amazing, but that takes similar risks to Halloween, but because I have less cares that they're kind of demolishing the law or changing things. I enjoy that a lot more. But there's something about some of those Halloween sequels where they're like retrospectively
because their quality goes from
ruining
like,
the first one for me.
We're back, and then it goes
causes a disaster just like
exactly.
that. Yeah.
And even in the new trilogy that happened, like you watch the first one, you go,
man.
okay, and then you watch the second one, you go, okay, and then the third one, you go, when it goes all the way down, you're like, yes, this is Halloween.
Just like the new Star Wars is the new Halloweens, man. Like, well, I mean, Halloween 2018 is way better than Force Awakens, but I hated the second one and thought surely the third one can't be worse than the fucking second one. But then the third one was like through the floor levels of terrible. Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason with Halloween, I don't really give a shit. But with like something like Star Wars, I really do give a shit about that. So it's just weird.
See, I do give a shit about Halloween.
Yeah.
Is the problem. Yeah.
But then I love the
character.
I love the background. And I think, to be honest, for me, that's what doing this has now done for me. I always wondered, why is Halloween my favourite horror movie? I never analysed it, not until now. And doing that, I've realised, I just love the style of it. I love how haphazardly it was put together.
Still my favourite slasher killer. Like when I play Dead by Daylight, I'm only playing as Michael Myers.
And I always play as Laurie Strode when I'm a survivor. Yeah. Like it's just something about Michael Myers, something about the shape. And by the way, he never is called Michael Myers in the film. So never together do you hear the words Michael Myers.
Yeah,
it's like
it's the Myers house and they call him Michael, don't they?
Yeah, and then but even in the script he was called the Shape.
Yeah.
You know, in the credits he's the Shape.
Which is cool as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool name.
And Carpenter still calls him the Shape, you know. But yeah, for me it's just this sort of very quickly put together film which happened in a month, and it's a microcosm. It's
it's lightning in a bottle.
It's lightning in a bottle. It's like Pete Townsend writing Pinball Wizard did it in a quick way, and it became one of their biggest ever hits. And this is like the biggest hit for Carpenter. They loved doing it. Everyone loved it. And it comes across in the film in a way that it was all location. It was all so well done that it holds up to this day, considering how little that budget was. And I think, in a way, I must have seen that subconsciously. There's something in there that speaks to my artistic side, putting stuff together for so cheap and just doing it and having fun with it. And they're all kids just going, yes, let's do this film. And then like one Alder and Donald Pleasance involved in it, who fully put himself on it.
Being as though we have covered Night of the Living Dead and hearing the backstory of that, do you not think that harms a little bit your point of view of it being this small independent movie putting it all together when you know that there's one that happened 11 years earlier with even less of a budget?
I guess I'm not comparing it. I don't really want to compare the film. Like, this is the thing. I know this is what you're doing with Black Christmas and stuff. I'm trying not to compare it to other things other than like Friday the 13th, things that are inferior.
So things that are going to be.
Support your point of view.
Exactly. But I don't want to necessarily go...
Because it's your favourite movie and you don't want it to...
I don't want to hurt it.
Yeah. Unless it's a shit sequel. That's...
Because I'm trying myself in a way to break into these areas and work in some sort of artistic way. I've wanted to be an actor. I want to work in radio. I want to be a professional in it. You know, that throwing things together, no matter if Night of the Living Dead has got a lower budget, well, good on it. Thank God that was a thing, because it sparked a whole genre of zombie films off, and it created the lore for that. And Halloween, in a way, does that for the slasher genre as well. So, I mean, it's great. Comparing those two, I don't mind the idea of
I think that's the
both
difference
being
between
there.
you and me. I can't help but compare everything to everything
But
else.
I just don't care, because I'm glad that was successful, but I'm also glad that was successful. Like, brilliant.
I don't think like the conditions of the movie,
but it doesn't cheapen it for me.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think like it cheapens. I think like
I don't think it particularly hurts Halloween. It more elevates
because they had their own
Living Dead.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess
it does.
Circumstance in what is going on in their little world. They couldn't have seen what we have seen. That's a Lord of the Rings of Power. You have not seen what I have seen. But they are just living in that moment and doing it, and they're not comparing it in that way. Carpenter is obviously using, and Hill are both sort of using what they've learned and what they grew up with as kids with the horror movies they watched, and implemented all of this and put it into a nice neat package. But then I'm sure Romero did something of that kind. Like, you know, we all work off something, and
Yeah.
so for me it doesn't cheapen it because it was because both were on a shoestring budget. That's great. I'm so glad that they were both able to springboard from that.
I think that, like, if you're in a startup company, and just because you're not the very first ever startup company doesn't cheapen your achievement making it successful.
Would it be cheap that we made more, if we actually like did well? Would that be cheap?
I did well, I would definitely say I owe it to movies like Halloween.
But then Carpenter would never say that he doesn't owe things to, like, he saw a movie in 3D at the cinema, like Came from Outer Space in 3D, and he says that was his way. That was his
and Night of the
horror.
Living Dead was very influenced by the guerrilla filmmaking style of Carnival of Souls, and I'm presuming Carnival of Souls was probably influenced by something with an even lower budget that nobody saw.
Well, that's just how ideas propagate and change and grow. Like, that's just the creative process.
But at the same time, if you're arguing a movie's merit out of its pioneering, being a pioneer in something, it's worthy of kind of debate with.
Well, I don't think.
Before.
Sorry to speak for you, Joe, but I don't think in this you were saying that it was pioneering, like, this kind of filmmaking. I don't think you were saying that, right? You were just saying that it was another example of this kind of filmmaking, and that is inspirational to you.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you know, he did use. There were certain things that Carpenter did at that time on such a low budget, with the idea of the camera going up the following.
Yeah, there's definitely very pioneering stuff in there.
And again, you argue that Black Christmas does that as well, and I guess, that's true.
Yeah, the killer's POV. I mean, it's definitely done better in Halloween, I think, especially the opening scene.
But I only think pioneering in the sense that it started and continues to make a whole subgenre thrive. Like, it's helped it. It's done nothing. Halloween has done nothing but make horror richer.
Yeah, there's something to be said with how enduring it is as a movie. It's up there with, like, your Alien and your The Shining and your The Exorcist and your Texas Chainsaw Massacre, these movies that will probably always be famous so long as people are interested in horror movies. And it's hard to break that list now because there's so many ultra classics like those that completely and totally define a subgenre and have to be taken into account if you're going to say, oh, this is like the best slasher of all time. Well, I mean, is it better than Halloween? Probably not, but
you could even take say recent PS5 thing with Astrobot, and how there's this argument right now that it is using a lot of other games and platforms that's been on the PlayStation and just making themselves popular by adding us all in and making a lovely game out of it. There's been a creator already saying, wow, we've already made some of this, like, why you're using our character in your game.
Yeah, I haven't played it, but you're saying people are saying it's like Ratchet and Clank and Crash and Spyro and these kind of movies rolled into one, Jack and Daxter. Yeah, it's
like it's a love letter to PlayStation and its characters.
Yeah, there's a difference between homage and like.
But they do
plagiarism.
They do say though the best artists steal, and that continues to be true.
That's just how ideas
evolve.
Yeah, they have to be taken. Yeah, I mean, you can't live in a vacuum.
And
also, frankly, you don't get, even if you did hypothetically live in a vacuum and then you come up with the same idea independently, you don't get credit for that. Like, you live in the world that you live in.
It's a harsh world,
and things that have happened before you absorb. Yeah, exactly. And I don't think paying reference to something is a bad thing, and I don't think
you should reference it. And it's quite the morality in it is that you should reference whatever you're working on, and that you've been inspired by something else.
Yeah, wear your influences on your sleeve, be open about it, but also kind of, I suppose in the first instance, convince yourself that you're contributing something
Yeah,
that
not
there is like an
just
inventive
redoing
step.
it,
Yeah. But that's just how ideas grow and evolve and change. Just like genes. This is how ideas go.
Yeah.
And so no, I don't
And
think
music
that things,
is the same,
Yeah,
and
everything,
every single
thing
artistic
is the same.
Output is
Yeah.
the same. Yeah.
All of culture is the same. So no, I don't think that something being like completely original is like the only metric of a good movie.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
I think that like the working conditions of the movie, or like the filming conditions of the movie, is actually kind of distinct from the ideas of the movie as well. So for example, if the like the filming conditions were exactly the same as Night of the Living Dead within Halloween, so let's say the same budget or comparable budget at the different years, the same amount of people, the same amount of experience, exactly the same as Night of the Living Dead, I don't think that you would hold that against Halloween just because Night of the Living Dead did it first. However, if Halloween stole Night of the Living Dead's story, like the creative element.
Yeah, I don't think it affects the actual piece of work itself.
So I think there's a distinction between like the kind of process of making the movie and the actual movie that you make as well, in the way that you can kind of measure originality, right? Like, and I don't think that just because Night of the Living Dead did it like made a film under these conditions first diminishes the achievement of Halloween's cast and crew.
It makes me enjoy and like Night of the Living Dead even more, thinking that actually, they did do this on such a small budget, but it doesn't take away from Halloween. It just, to me, it's separate. Halloween did it as well as Night of the Living Dead. They both created something under what would, if you were thinking about it logically, you wouldn't probably even start. If you didn't have that artistic side of you that believed,
you've got to know exactly what you want to make.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the belief in your own talent to be able to make it.
It's all about that belief and like just putting all of this sort of logic to one side and saying, we can't do this on this. Bring in someone who can, like, they can do it.
Yeah,
and they did do
bravery,
it.
Sort of is.
In both circumstances, they did it and was great success and inspired so many others and created so many. If you think of Romero, the fact he was able to go on and create so many other films, he employed thousands of people because he was successful. Carpenter employed thousands. It's not only arts, it's like everyone involved in every film post their Halloweens or Night of the Living Deads. It's just created jobs and
an industry is a living and breathing organism, and every success spawns 1,000 other successes.
It's like a band will have so many people who aren't a part of the band, but they'll be lugging things around in lorries or in vans, and they'll be setting it all up, but they might not have an artistic bone in their body, but they're involved in the industry.
Yeah,
and it's the success of that band that gives them a job. Yeah. So what's your takeaway of this film after doing it, analysing it to the nth degree?
I mean, I still think it's a masterpiece of the genre. Still love the dialogue. If anything, I love the dialogue more on this rewatch because I think I was paying a bit more attention than my usual rewatch. Direction, soundtrack especially. It basically spawned my favourite subgenre, or one of my favourite subgenres in horror. And for that, I've got to give it massive credit for. I'll still watch a slasher if it came out tomorrow, even if it's got a 3 on IMDb, just because I like the subgenre. And that's all owed to the popularization of that subgenre from Halloween. Donald Pleasance is amazing. And I can't say enough about how great this movie is. So.
But you're right, Dave. We should never take away from those who came before, like the Black Christmases of the world. They are important.
Oh no,
they're definitely important.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Because Halloween wouldn't exist without those inspirations. So they do deserve their place, and we should do Black Christmas soon. How about that?
I would love to. I would love to do Black Christmas.
Ooh, with Christmas coming up soon, because it is right now, October 31st.
Yes.
Or in England, the 31st of October. So yes, let's do that soon then.
Sounds
Deal.
good. Sounds good.
Then we can finally. I'll swing all the way around. I'll go 180 and like
Well, I'm
and
pretty-
Love Black Christmas instead.
Well, I'm pretty nervous about watching it and realizing it's shit.
Anyway, happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween!
Sweet teas, candy.
I was thinking we could screw him over and cover one of the remakes of Black Christmas.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
let's do that.
come on. The worst things, but they somehow get worse.
I kind of don't mind the remakes. They're okay. Yeah.
Even the second one. The one
I
that-
think the second one's stronger than the first one.
Oh yeah, maybe. Actually, it might be the first one is. I forgot. It's so terrible. I
Yeah.
forgot. It's so 2000s.
That's on film now. Yeah. Oh man.
Fuck my
Better
stomach.
pick these up.
Oh, no.
You licked that one as well. Oh, back in the pot with all the other sweets.
Oh shit!
There's gonna be such a long cut between the first one and when it gets
Yeah, bitch.
Just so everybody knows that wasn't the first time.
Yeah.
Well, you're editing this, so.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep all of that in.
And with that, on that bombshell,
Yeah.
thank you for watching
Thank
or
you
listening.
for
Thank
watching
you.
and or listening.
But have a wonderful Halloween
Yes.
on the day it is today.
Happy-
Where we going trick or treating, Dave?
Oh, Haddonfield.
Ooh. Haddonfield in one of the Birmingham suburbs.
Yeah, Haddonfield, Birmingham.
Birmingham.
Yeah.
Little Haddonfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go then. Yeah, sure.
That's that.